at 6:58, the executive session was concluded. No formal action was taken, and we are in open session. And with that, we will go into our consent agenda. We have 5 items. I read that right? 5 items, 6 items, I'm sorry, on consent. Oh, actually, for that, we need to do the roll call. We did it, just so y'all know, we did it at the beginning of the executive session, and everyone's here. So we have 6 items on consent agenda. Is there any that might be okay? Any clarifying questions for Miranda on the consent agenda?
Yeah, Miranda, so just to clarify for the PIF and TAP fee agreement for 196 West First Street. So there's going to be the one TAP fee that's going to serve 3 temporary buildings, but they're going to pay the TAP fee for a multi-unit purpose. Did I read that correctly? Or
yeah, basically there's yes, basically that's the gist. There's an existing tap, water and sewer tap there. Didn't make sense to our code requires separate taps for each building. And instead of and not just allowing them to I guess have an exception for not having those taps to following code. We came to an agreement with the developer where their long-term plans is to have a multi-use building. So in return for us not requiring them to have separate taps, like the code says, they will pay the fee for a much larger tap, which is planned long-term there. And the thinking behind that in part is that so that if anybody else approaches us and say, hey, you did this favor for them, can you do it for us? Well, sure, if you're willing to pay for that tap fee for the long-term use of the property, we'll consider that. That was the thinking behind this arrangement.
okay, got it. And you don't see any concerns, like it's got your full support?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a win-win where they can develop this temporary use of the property quickly and much more efficiently. We're not tapping our water and sewer main in multiple locations for temporary use. And in return, the town is getting a significant fee for the long-term development of the fee. I think it's a good win-win for everyone.
Okay, thank you. That's my line.
I wanted to ask about 4.6. Are we, can you explain that one?
Yes. Actually, I will. Can I have one question on old 196 West First Street. So this sets us up well for the food pantry, right? Am I at the right part of town?
Yep.
And then so I guess what happens when the food pantry moves and the owner wants to do something else and needs more water? How's that going to work?
So they're paying the fee now for the larger tap to use more water for that property.
Okay.
And then at the time that they submit for their building permit within 30 days of that application, whatever the difference in the fee for those larger taps between now and then, they'll have to make up. So the town won't be out of any revenue.
Okay. Perfect. That's what I was wondering. Thank you. So on 4.6, this, as you likely know, we had some applicants to be appointed to the board to run out the rest of this term. And we chose Luke Miller. And we just put that in there on consent agenda. So the actual, I apologize. I was getting mixed up between resolutions and ordinances, but well, the actual aim and the oath is in there and clarified for folks, and we could just do the swearing in afterwards, but we're just approving and consent that we agree to swear in and intend to swear in Luke Miller for the remainder of the term.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Thank you, Macy.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
So as I look on this, the swearing in actually is what happens now, even though I'm not reading it. So yeah, so even though it's not specified, the actual swearing in ceremony is about to happen right now.
All right, Luke, we're excited to hear what your speech is.
Safe as everybody's.
High expectations here.
So it's been a year and a half since I did this, but I think he raises his hand. Okay, cool. Right hand. There you go. So you can just repeat after me. I, Luke Miller, do
I-
solemnly affirm
I, Luke Miller, do solemnly affirm
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and that I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability
and that I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability
perform the duties of the office of the Board of Trustees
perform the duties of the office of the Board of Trustees
of the town of Nederland upon which I am about to enter.
of the town of Nederland upon which I am about to enter.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you
Welcome.
very much.
Congratulations. Thank you, everyone. So with that, we'll go into action item number 1. 5.1, 2024 municipal election update and drawing lots. I believe when you're ready, Macy.
Tonight, we will be drawing the lot for the municipal election. We will be using an online program called Wheel of Names. Many of you know we have 2 nomination petitions submitted for mayor, which was Tom Mahold and Billy Giblin. And then the nominations submitted by trustees were Chris Larson, Riley McAllister, Luke Miller, Jesse Severs, Nicole Sterling, and John Stevens. Aaron Ty, excuse me, and also Aaron Ty. I'm doing this off of memory. So tonight we'll be drawing lot to determine which ordinance will be listed on the ballot. Miranda,
Yep, so Miranda here. I will be sharing screen with the fun wheel of names. There you go. Sorry, it's Macy. Can you make that full screen to the best of your ability? So we'll start with mayor. What will happen is I will click this, it will spin, and it'll tell us the first name on the ballot. So if you're ready, once Macy makes this, can you change the layout, yeah, too, and hide the people? Maybe you can't. All right, so we'll just have to tell you or squint, those of you in the room. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. So for mayor, the candidates will be listed in order of Billy Giblin first and Tom Mahold second. Okay.
Yes. Alphabetical.
So
Yeah.
now
Lots of luck.
we will do the 7 trustees. So we now have all 7 trustees listed in the wheel of names, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I feel like there should be a drum roll. So the first name on the ballot will be Christopher Larson. Macy, are you writing these down as we go? Yeah, I will. Second name will be Nicole Sterling.
Recently.
Third name is Jesse Severs. The fourth name is Riley McAllister. The fifth name is Luke Miller. The sixth name is Aaron Ty. And then that we leave the seventh name, John Stevens. So that is the order in which those names will be listed on the ballot.
Thank you, Miranda and Macy and Wheel of Fortune / name. Appreciate it. With that, we will go to our second action item, the STR moratorium extension ordinance. Oh, yeah, what am I thinking? Yes, I'd like to open up for public comment. Of course, we will. Sorry, we just cut to the chase and it seems like it's done, but now we'll open it up for public comment. I hope you like our order. You have any comment? Now's the time. Folks in the room, any comments on this? If not,
The wheel was rigged.
I had my finger on it. And then, folks online, if you have a comment, just raise your hand or start talking. Eric is announcing his lame duckness. No, hearing and seeing no one interested in the comment on this, I think we are good with 5.1. Thank you. And we'll move to 5.2, the STR moratorium extension ordinance. We'll have Macy go through the aim, and then for sake of just keeping things concise and keeping us moving, just clarifying questions at this point or something you maybe feel the public, you want them to really know, that's what we're going to say, and then we'll go to public comment. So just clarifying questions or something you feel like, you need to say for sake of the public.
All right. So currently there is a moratorium in place on all new short-term rental license applications. And there's a subcommittee formed by Planning Commission members who have been performing research. The subcommittee also includes town staff members. And we have been performing research and meeting regularly since October to discuss various code amendments to be considered. The subcommittee is not ready to begin the ordinance drafting stage, and the current moratorium expires on March 6th. So the subcommittee is currently recommending that town staff implement a 90-day extension to the 6-month moratorium. This means that the current moratorium would be in effect until June 4th, 2024. And then the question before you tonight is, do you approve ordinance 857, which would extend a temporary moratorium on the submission, acceptance, and processing and approval of any license application, which is just the same ordinance language that's in place now. It would just be extending that.
Clarifying questions?
I've got a couple. I got a request to look into it. Does this apply to commercial properties that would be used as STRs?
Yes, it would be any short-term rental application.
Okay,
It's a moratorium on the issuance of new applications. So anyone with a current application can continue to seek renewal, but
okay,
it's the processing of any new.
okay. And the second question is, usually you do moratoriums or need time to study something. What's left to be studied in the couple months that we've got left?
So I think it's really kind of evaluating some of the legal components of the different recommendations out there by the planning commission. You know, when you're looking at caps, really assessing kind of the legal complexities that might be related to that. That's really ultimately what we're kind of finishing on. There's been a lot of work done related to the fire pit ban and the notifications to neighbors and how we might kind of clean up some of that neighborliness, but it's really on how do we want to cap this? How do we want to handle some of the complexities of host not present under that primary license? That we want to make sure that we're equitable and fair in our approach. And that's been taking us kind of down a variety of different paths. And we're really just trying to narrow in on what makes sense. Had a great meeting today, really feel like we're in a good place. And so our intention is to still try to beat this moratorium timeline, but just need a little bit more time to draft that ordinance and make sure that we are evaluating kind of all 5 license types. If we try to bring them down to maybe just like 1 or 2 license types, that we're considering all the different host types that we currently have and
Great.
being fair in how they would be impacted by any ordinance changes.
Do we have any idea at this point how many people have been impacted by the moratorium or who's in abeyance waiting for this to be cleared up?
No, I can't.
Yeah, you got a public comment from someone who's interested in having kind of a dual license situation. That obviously has impacted that person. We did see kind of a quick rush to get in a lot of applications before the moratorium ended. So we saw a spike then, but probably aside from the individual you got a comment for, I personally, and I don't think Macy has interacted with anyone. There are some people who say like, oh, what a bummer. I was really looking forward to it, but didn't feel like they couldn't wait past the moratorium.
Got it. Okay,
And these were individuals who wanted to like host a room out of their bedroom, which is obviously what our desire is anyways. That's what the short-term rental was always for, was individuals who were wanting to do that room or home rental as a supplemental income. And so we feel confident that those who said like, oh, this is really too bad would positively benefit from the current considerations in place.
got it.
Any other clarifying questions? Or things you want the public to hear before we open public comment? If not, we will go to public comment. If anyone in the room has a public comment on STRs, I'll ask you guys first. If you do, John, go ahead, walk up to the mic there at the podium. Make sure the little green LED light is on, and then just state your name and your relationship to Nederland, and then your comment for 3 minutes. Just a sec.
How about now? There we go. Yeah, my name is John Stevens, and I'll be running for the Board of Trustees here in April. And I have a question. What was the short-term rental before this new moratorium thing?
Well, it was underway, and people were, people have short-term rentals, and then many people were going through the process of doing it on the up and up, and applying for STRs and running their STRs, and so. But there were some issues that came through a lot of public comments, and that made it clear that there were some things that needed to be improved upon the original ordinance, because the ordinance, there was an original ordinance a few years ago, and that was kind of the guidelines people have been operating under.
What was that ordinance?
I mean, I can't really.
So perhaps I could.
You guys,
speak to it,
you
yeah.
can bullet it better than I can.
There are 5 license types under the current ordinance. There's 2 primary license types, host present, host not present. There are 3 classes of licenses, ADUs, non-primary, and then central business district, general commercial industrial. And so, when this ordinance was first put in place, the point was to kind of bring down the level of short-term rentals we had. There were over 100 at the time. And so by kind of implementing this ordinance, it brought it down to about 30. Well, we started to see the creep come back up. And I think one of the concerns is that takes away housing stock from long-term rentals. And we really identified that primary resident host not present is supposed to be meant for primary homeowners, but because of the way the ordinance was written, it kind of created a little bit of a loophole for secondary homeowners to come in and claim primary. And then you kind of question, is this truly their primary or not? And so we really felt like we needed to tighten up some of that language related to the classes.
Okay, now, in my mind, a short-term rental would be 3 months or less.
So our code is 30 days or less. Anything over 30 days is considered a long-term rental.
Because I see some people maybe coming for a season and leaving.
Right, so that would be long-term rental, and we do see some of our short terms end up renting for 90 days, in which case they're not subject to the short-term rental ordinance. They don't have to pay occupational tax because they're renting for a long-term space.
Now, would
But
that
we
fall
encourage them to have-
under, also would the Airbnbs and crap like that fall under there?
Yeah, they can still rent on an Airbnb hosting platform. They would just notify Macy that they're renting in a long-term capacity. So then they're not subject to the kind of those components of the short-term rental. And that's still something we want to keep in place, is that ability to, if you're over 30 days, now you're considered long-term. We're just kind of trying to clean up that multiple secondary homeowners trying to come in, buy up our housing stock that would be great for long-term rentals, our community, and trying to convert them. So we just really recognize that there were some pieces in the ordinance that needed to be tightened up a little bit. And that's really all we're focused on at this point, is how do we kind of control the licensure piece
Yeah.
to make sure that we're really it's locals who can utilize this as a secondary income or primary income and not secondary homeowners.
Yeah, we don't need a town full of Airbnbs. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else in the room that wants to speak? Hearing none, let's go online. Do we have somebody?
No.
No.
I was just gonna say, it does need to be, it is an emergency ordinance, so in order to pass, we would need 6 votes approving it.
Let's see. Okay. And so Luke is officially sworn in. So
Luke can officially vote, yes.
Okay,
And the reason it's an emergency is because your moratorium is set to expire.
right.
And so we need that to be decided today to give us the 90 days. And just a reminder, Mayor Pro Tem Mahold asked me why 90 days, why not less, when I asked for your not a 4. And my response was, really recognizing that we have an election coming up. We kind of almost lose a month in that election process. And so we do need that time, but we're set to go before the Planning Commission with an initial review in February.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we have enough to go to a vote. So I move that,
I was like to
What's-
discuss.
okay, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to hear how, if at all, we're addressing the public comment that was submitted. And I'm curious as to why we're bucketing all of the zones together in this, and we don't have special exceptions for commercial district.
So that, again, we don't have anything official for you. We're just in conversation at this point. So there was conversation today about, maybe looking at central business district, neighborhood commercial. Those are the conversations we still need to have before the Planning Commission. I think the feeling was, well, what if we just did this kind of resident, non-resident ADU and not really clarifying the central business district, but there was really a split of perhaps there is value in making sure that those zones within kind of the DDA district maybe are considered here because those are more short-term in nature. It's where your hotels and motels are allowed under special review use. So there's still conversation. So I guess I don't want anything I've said tonight to say that's what we're going for. We're still evaluating almost on a weekly basis with the Planning Commission and legal on kind of what the best ways to fine tune this.
So just to clarify that, there's a potential here that someone like the what's his name? Nick, something that someone like Nick, right, would benefit from the changes that are going to be made once this moratorium expires.
Potentially, I mean, there are some feedback and there are some trustees who have said, I don't want someone to have like more than one license type, right? And so if we separate these things out, where ADU is a license and Class C is a license, then yes, maybe. So under current code, this individual could benefit. So the moratorium obviously impacted that individual because they could have held an ADU plus a Class C.
Mhm.
If we kind of do away with that and we say there's only one license type total, you as a person or an entity can only have one license type, which is what some trustees have expressed to us, then no, someone like Nick couldn't do what he's seeking to do. And so those are things that we really still need to kind of like massage through. What I would say about the public comment is we have been working with them about like hotel, motel, bed and breakfast. There are other options for that individual because of where they're zoned, even short-term rental, that they could pursue a short-term rental and like a hotel motel license. So there are other options for that person. Short-term rental is the fastest because those other options require a special review use. But it for someone in a commercial district, they do have other considerations. So I guess if that doesn't demonstrate the complexity in which we're trying to unpack this,
Sure.
I think that's like a great example is that we do have these various situations where, Macy's got an individual who has a primary home, an ADU, and then kind of a tiny home. And it's like, you can have two of the three under current code, but she would prefer to rent out kind of her whole parcel in all three components, but that doesn't work under current code. So I mean, the hard thing is like, there's just no great one size fits all. It's like, there's no way we can account for every what if situation. We're just trying to figure out what makes the most sense for the majority of short-term rentals that we have or have heard from and kind of understand their situations.
Could we extend the moratorium on residential and not on commercial?
I am
With
going to
what
look to
purpose?
Keith
Well, for the purpose,
Widener and Duran, who is our attorney on tonight, Keith Martin. I don't see why you couldn't amend the ordinance prior to adoption, Keith, but
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, you would, right now, it's the moratorium applies to any new application for any town permit or license that would authorize a short-term rental. So you would have to make a motion to modify section 2 of that ordinance to either create a carve-out for applications for short-term rentals located within any, commercially zoned district, or you can come up with a special exception. But coming up with that kind of process would be difficult on the fly. So I would probably recommend that if you are going to do a carve out, it would be an amendment to section 2.
and I think that my ask would be that your amendment to section 2 would be this moratorium applies to everything but Class C, and keep it simple. Class C is CBD, neighborhood commercial, or excuse me, general commercial and industrial.
What does that do to your process?
I mean, it just opens up people being able to apply. I think Keith, don't correct me if I mistake anything here. I think at any point when we implement regulations, there's kind of that, like, are you honoring what was, which is what we did on our current ordinance, where we gave people X amount of time to kind of apply for the new license type? Or are you saying, no, you either fit in this bucket or you don't, and if you don't, you've lost that license? I don't think anyone wants to go that way. But those are kind of, we'll just see an uptick potentially in those licenses. And I guess that comes back to the question of, if the goal is to really kind of control this, letting one license type go where now we could have 20 applications out of nowhere, I think it doesn't make sense to the goal of kind of controlling short-term rentals as a whole.
And putting together a comprehensive plan
Right.
before.
I mean,
Right.
my worry is that if we do accept applications for a certain license type and not the others, and then we change the law around that license type only a couple of months later, then all of a sudden they have to go back to the drawing board and get into compliance within a certain amount of time. And it just creates an unnecessary headache also for the applicants as well as us, right? As well as town staff. So, I mean, I feel like the fact that there's somebody writing us about this is impacting my willingness to extend this moratorium. Like, I think it needs to get done, right? But at the same time, I feel like going piecemeal on it might cause even more problems in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I was reading through the aim and the resolution, and just feeling a certain reluctance just to extend on the basis of the word emergency bothers me, and the emergency captured in the fear of the uptick of applications feels like maybe, but I'm wondering why we didn't meet the timeline last time we put in place a moratorium, and what's to say that we're not going to, or that we're going to fulfill the timeline this time.
Yeah, so I will tell you the not a four perhaps changed things a little bit because we were ready to just kind of rush this thing forward, schedule as needed planning commission stuff. And so they have been working, they have been meeting about every other week to work through this, but just realizing that, there's some things you can do, there's other things you can't. There's a lot of case law out there. There's a lot of lawsuits related to short-term rentals. We've been really trying to monitor that and pay attention to the impact of that and potentially all the legal complexities here. And so realizing we were coming close on the deadline kind of felt like, okay, fine, we can rush this, but what good is a rushed ordinance? That's never a good idea. And just not feeling like we were at the place in which we could make a decision on the best means to handle licensing and caps that really captured all of the unique situations we're trying to face. And so I wouldn't say it was a lack of effort by town staff or the planning commission. They've been incredible to work with. It's just we would have released what we felt like was probably kind of a flawed ordinance, and that didn't feel right. And so that's why I came to you and I asked. And when you gave the not a four, we slowed down, became more methodical. Planning commission had an executive session. They received some legal advice, and then we kind of picked back up. And so everyone wants to meet this. And I think that greatest example is like, we're ready to bring an ordinance before the planning commission for discussion in February. It's just, you only have 2 meetings in March. You don't really have meetings in April. That's like a wash of a month. And so the earliest we can bring it to you is May. I mean, if the alternative is you really want us to rush and you don't want to give us the 90 days, then we'll accommodate. But that's us kind of rushing to get you something in 6 weeks.
Plus,
You okay?
Miranda, doesn't it have to come to us for a discussion and then an action? So there would be.
I mean, ideally, we wouldn't want to go
meetings?
straight to action. So that's asking the planning commission to like be ready for them to vote on the 28th. And that's taking away kind of their discussion item so that it can come to you on that first week of March as a discussion and then an action in March. I'm concerned about rushing something just for the sake of rushing something when we want to do it right. And I do understand the impact, and we are not trying to withhold people's ability to apply for licenses. And we would do it faster if you didn't just have that weird election month where really nothing can happen. Nothing ever happens on the first meeting where people take their oath because you're a new board and you're just not ready. So happy to like officially commit on the record that first meeting in May will come to you with a discussion item if that provides comfort. And then we'll structure our time with the planning commission and the subcommittee to really meet that deadline of that being your first discussion of this ordinance.
I think I would say too that, given the number of mountain towns across Colorado that have, been struggling with how to regulate short-term rentals, that rushing this probably is not the best approach, and that taking the time to do it right will probably benefit all of us in the long run.
And Jesse, it was a real Rubik's Cube of scheduling when you throw the election into it.
I'm okay with passing this.
We've got, Miranda, you said there's one person, we've closed public comment, but did one person pipe up and want to speak?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I saw your hand raised and I wasn't sure if you wanted to give public comment and if you were open to reopening it for that.
I'm open to reopening it, if the person that's, is ready to speak.
Apologies, I missed the opportunity and I'm totally fine with the discussion as it's gone forward. You can proceed. Apologies.
Excellent. Well, thanks for commenting. Any further discussion? You have another point? Okay.
Yeah, it's John Stevens again. Why couldn't you temporarily go back to the old ordinance until this is resolved?
Miranda?
So I think that would be,
That's
yeah,
what we're
if the
considering
board
then.
chose not to extend the moratorium, it would allow the old ordinance to go back into effect. The reason that town staff asked for a moratorium in the first place is just to build a little space. Like, it's hard to be actively processing applications while simultaneously trying to evaluate how to redo this ordinance. So we asked the board for the space to do this work, and that's pretty common when working on ordinances that impact licensure, is to put that pause in place for us to work.
The other question I had is where some board members only want to give one total license, why not give 3 across all and then limit everyone to 3? That's it.
Yeah, so that's some of the conversations being held, is like, do we just kind of just even have just one license and then use a different capping system where it's like, you can have X amount of days or X amount of documented stays, which is kind of a days rented type measurement. That's something else that's on the table that has been discussed.
Well, I was gonna say like an example, let's say a person had a business here, they retired, they'd also have a house and maybe a second house. Now, why couldn't they, if they were gonna retire, why couldn't they turn all 3 of those into short-term rentals if they're going to, still retire, or at least 2 of them into it?
Can I
Sure.
jump in real quick?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think the whole point of this moratorium, and we're gonna have more discussions about this, is because the idea would be like, hey, why can't 2 of those be long-term rentals and you keep one for yourself to come and go? But why do all of them have to be? And that's perhaps causing a problem in our housing situation, or maybe it's not, but that's why there's so much discussion going on right now.
Yeah, I remind us that this is an ordinance to approve, to extend the ordinance 857 and not to debate the committee work that's being done behind the scenes. I'd say give this team the time to finish their work.
Yeah, and I was speaking like work product at this point. Like, I don't have enough to tell you, like, and so we meet next Tuesday to like really solidify that, but I don't even have enough today to say, this is what we're going to the planning commission with our final recommendation. I'm just
Right.
telling you where the conversation has gone over the last couple of months.
So those that want to, are those open meetings if somebody wants to come in?
The work committees are not.
Okay.
It's just 2 commissioners and staff.
Yeah.
But definitely anyone who's interested in this should attend the February 28th Planning Commission, where it will be the first thing discussed on that agenda.
I can hardly wait. Okay.
And also, John, I think that you've exposed the fact that part of the delay could be this board, right? Because there is a discussion to be had about the ordinance that comes for us, which we may not all agree on sufficiently enough to bring it to a vote. And if we don't give ourselves that time, then we're putting everybody in a bad position. So it's not like it's going to come to us and we're going to immediately just be like, love it, great, rubber stamp, right? There's going to be a discussion on this board too.
Okay.
I move to approve ordinance 857 imposing a 90-day extension to the temporary moratorium on the submission, acceptance, processing, and approval of any license application for all short-term rentals until June 4th, 2024, and declaring an emergency with an immediate effective date of February 6th, 2024.
Second. Any further discussion? Macy, can you call the vote?
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
trustee Severs,
Yes.
trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yeah. And do I need to make a note about Mayor Billy on the roll call?
Maybe you could just note for the record that Mayor Billy had to leave in the midst of that discussion, and I do not believe, well, it may not be returning during the meeting? I know. So Mayor Pro Tem Mahold is now chairing this meeting.
That closes out action items. We finished 5.1, 5.2, 5.3.
Well, you haven't done 5.3, although if you want to just
So-
approve 5, I'm just kidding. If you want to just approve 5.3, I'm here for it.
Okay, Brenda, introduce, please.
All right, so this is an action item related to the local planning capacity grant collaboration with Gilpin County on a regional housing authority study. So the local planning capacity grant is a DOLA grant that's really looking at increasing capacity for local governments related to kind of planning, land use, permitting, zoning. In order to be eligible for a local planning capacity grant, you have to submit a letter of intent. Just for clarification, the reason Nederland, I didn't bring one forward to you was we were still in the midst of our housing needs assessment and they wanted that to be finished before we come forward. So do intend to come forward for this grant in the future, but Gilpin County went forward and they were invited to apply, and in kind of evaluating the best way to utilize their funds, they're really interested in studying a regional housing authority. So under Colorado revised statute, you can have a multi-jurisdictional regional housing authority. And what they would love to do is partner with Lyons, received confirmation today, Lyons, Nederland, Gilpin County, Blackhawk and Central City as a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. And the reason we are really interested in studying that is I put in the packet, all the benefits of this, but one of it is just recognizing that we thoroughly enjoy our partnership with Boulder County Housing Authority, but one of our limitations is kind of that inability to prioritize our local residents. And perhaps under a multi-jurisdictional housing authority that's peak to peak in nature, we'd really be able to look at how to ensure that as we're developing this affordable housing, that housing authority could support us in making sure that our individuals are housed under these structures. And so again, I'm not an expert on regional housing authorities or multi-jurisdictional. That's why we need a study. You really just can't just pop up a regional housing authority. You need something to study the feasibility. How would we do it? How would we fund it? What would this look like? And that's really what this study would do, is provide us all the components to kind of set one up. But the application we're working on, if you approve, is to ultimately end with an IGA, where we work with all the jurisdictions to enter into an IGA to commit to really addressing housing on a peak-to-peak jurisdictional basis. So as town staff, I've really valued our partnership with Gilpin County. I think it's incredible that when going to apply for this, we were the first call they made and wanting to be a part of this. The Peak-to-Peak Housing and Human Services has been talking about a multi-jurisdictional housing authority and wanting to study it themselves. We're not experts, so this would be a great way to bring in subject matter experts. In kind of preparing for this, we've met with Summit County, Clear Creek County, we're set to meet with Broomfield. We've just had a lot of conversations with Lake County and Leadville. So all of the teams that worked on these multi-jurisdictional studies for other municipalities have had incredible conversations with them, and they say this is really step one. This is where you go if you want to start getting this thing, up and running. So ultimately, what I'm asking from you tonight is authority to partner with Gilpin on this application. It is due next Thursday, which is why it's coming to you today. And then also to allocate $10,000 of the $124,000 in ARPA to be matched. The reason for that is, it's $150,000 that we would be going for. Gilpin's able to commit 20, someone's got to come up with the other 10. Lyons is evaluating if they could split that with Nederland, but as it stands today, it would be Nederland kind of carrying the 10. It also asks for a competitive grant. If you have multi-jurisdictions going into a grant, but only one's taking the heavy lift, the question then becomes like, what's the investment by the others? So there is a component there of value of having us commit 10,000, up to 10,000, because I'm kind of hoping to share that cost with Lyons. The only other thing I would say in this is Nederland actually is already a part of another local planning capacity grant that Boulder County Housing Authority is going for. Just news to me, but we did learn that ultimately they're looking to align codes in Boulder County. I think, we still want to support that effort. It's an incredible effort to do a code analysis on housing across the board. Very much support that. And that I do also intend to come to you all when the next local planning capacity grant opens up to talk about a housing coordinator, a housing specific staffer. I'm doing the best I can to do all things housing, but it's tough. There's a lot happening out there. We've got 3 developers we're actively communicating with. It's a lot of time. And so I think there's value at a later time to come forward with that staff, and Lyons is willing to share that staffer with us. So a lot of regional collaboration going on in this space, but I think it ultimately starts with a study to look at that peak-to-peak housing authority. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, so up to 10,000, so Lions may come in with the other half.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, right now, I obviously am asking for the full commitment, just with you knowing though that my ask has gone into Lions saying, share this with us, and they're looking at the feasibility in doing so. I think the risk there is if Lions can't, then I'm asking Nederland to take on the 10, because we need to come up with the full 30.
Okay, but there's nothing for us to match for Boulder County's a grant application?
No.
Okay.
And the deadline one more time is?
February 15th.
Okay. Okay.
Not tomorrow. a week.
We've got like a week notice, okay?
Thursday.
Are you confident you can get it done?
Oh yeah. So, well, yes. So I am supporting Gilpin, whether this happens or not, supporting them. They're going forward no matter what. I just think in good partnership with this entity, this jurisdiction that's willing to incorporate Nederland and almost everything they're doing lately. I think it's great to go in and be a co-applicant with them.
Agreed. Okay. Board, any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Just clarifying questions right now.
Mm-hmm. Good. One for you, Miranda. Who you working with over on the Gilpin side?
Ray Rears, County Manager, Robert Gutierrez, their Director of Planning, and Jamie Boyle, who is their grant writer.
Excellent. Okay, and is their grant writer actually writing this one?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, we're co-authoring it with her. So again, I'm like helping them. Again, my hope is that we support them, but helping them with that. They're a little bit further behind in that, they were able to move forward because they have some remnants of a housing assessment, but officially are starting their housing needs assessment. They're using Bohannon Houston too, and so did Lions, which is actually pretty cool. So universally across the peak to peak, we all have the same consultant, and therefore our plans are similar in nature. So that also ties us together. But yeah, Gilpin was able to do this under kind of a different strong communities grant structure.
That's great. And then when will we be notified once this is submitted?
So I think we should be notified by April.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. And that's also the time in which the next round of local planning capacity grant will open, in which I will come back to you with the request for a staffer, a grant funded staffer.
Great. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Can we go to public comment? Miranda, is there anybody waiting?
Not online that I see.
Anybody in the room that wants to speak on this one? Hearing none, we close out public comment. Can I get a motion?
Well, just to say that I think that this is like more than just $10,000 to help Gilpin County out.
Right.
It has become at least clear to me from the time I've spent on this board that we need to establish more regional partnerships that share our values and our geographic circumstances. And just basically, I don't think that the folks down in the flats really understand where we're coming from for the most part. And that those partnerships are harder to maintain over time because of just this geographic and cultural divide that seems to exist. And so I think that this is a huge step in the direction of kind of establishing the peak-to-peak region as a region that can govern itself and doesn't have to rely on folks from down below to kind of understand our needs all the time. Because we understand them already, and so we should have the power to act on them. And this is a step in that direction. I think it's very important that we do this.
Yeah, I value our north-south access as every bit as much as our east-west access.
Yeah. And I mean, the redistricting committee went ahead and did that for us when they redistricted our state Senate seat. So I mean, there's just a fundamental political, cultural, geographic reality that we need to start maybe being more responsive to, and not just
Yeah.
hope that folks down in the flats are going to understand our needs, because they're not.
And I can tell you, us getting our housing study done first in the mountains, definitely got noticed down at
Mhm.
Dr. Cog. There's a huge planning region called the Nederland region that
Yep.
goes from along this axis all the way down south of I-7 to south of I-70. So it's, yeah, I think there's a lot to be done here, and I think following this model is could pop up in the form of a recreation district or any number of things that we can cooperate on
Yes,
going
indeed.
forward.
Has just a forgot clarifying question here. Peak to Peak Health and Human Services, have they talked about, obviously their scope is much bigger than just housing. But I'm assuming that if this pulls through, everything's approved, they'll kind of let go of that piece or somehow be a part of it.
Yeah, so the housing subcommittee out of the Housing and Human Services identified this as probably one of their top priorities is the study and evaluation of a regional housing authority. And we were actually going to do it in-house. And then came forward Gilpin County's invite, and then they realized like that's just the best way to use their grant funding. Otherwise, I would say all jurisdictions had already kind of banded together to do this just with staff. That's how important it was to that, not only that organization, but all of the jurisdictions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any qualms about this. I think it's fantastic to be able to pool our resources and to study it. And at this point, you know, no decisions have been made. We want to assess the viability. And if it turns out like, hey, maybe this is not the best option, that's okay too. But yeah, I think this is a low risk investment on our behalf in order to get something like this moving forward.
I'm quite convinced it will be the best option. And I move to approve the town of Nederland partnering with Gilpin County to submit a local planning capacity grant application for a peak-to-peak housing authority study with a $10,000 match coming from the town of Nederland.
Second.
Macy?
Right. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yippers.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, we finish our action items.
Second set
And we move to section 6 of the meeting, discussion items. And Miranda, do you want to kick off our one discussion?
Yeah, I realize you don't have the who's presenting what. So Trustee Sterling is actually going to present this. And then you, Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, and Trustee Severs will present the other action item.
All right, welcome everyone for the main event. The Godot Creative has been working with us for, goodness now, this is probably almost about 5 months, 4 or 5 months, give or take. We've gone through several iterations. Obviously, the first draft that came to us, we had some feedback about it. What didn't feel like it represented the community very well. You'll see that there's a couple of links actually in this AIM. One is the project website. 2 is the survey that was released recently, giving a variety of multiple options, especially after the first draft came back. And then also the results. So that results link shows you how the community voted, and also the different variations. So just a couple of little financial backgrounds. In April 2023, the town was awarded this $20,000 grant from the Tourism Management grant to work with a consultant on developing a brand identity and creative campaign for the town of Nederland. And the town committed $5,000 of this project as a matching fund. So what the question is before the board today is, does the BOT have any questions, comments, or feedback for Godot Creative on the town of Nederland's branding and creative identity? You'll also see some attachments, the banner, and some of that input. But ultimately, I think the conversation to be had is taking a look at what those top voting ones ended up being. Typically, I think the last time I checked, it was our Hula Hooping Moose, A1, A2. But if everyone's had a chance to also read the comments, there have been some variations suggested. So at this point, go ahead and open it up to the board for questions, comments, and everything in between.
I've got one.
Yes? Luke?
A point that I don't think I've seen too many people talk about is, what about our current logo?
I'm sorry, what's the point?
What about our current logo?
In terms of keeping it
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, I mean, and its consideration amongst these others, like we're talking a lot about A, B, or C, but nobody's saying, can we just keep what we have?
There was one, I think there was maybe one comment in the actual voting that had, or maybe a couple of comments that had suggested keeping that. I believe when we had our in-person session, we had one individual who had suggested that. So while I think some folks, a few folks are talking about it, I think what we're seeing is potentially, because of the way the voting has been going on, we are, I think, getting a sentiment that people are looking for maybe a refresh or a reassessment perhaps of who we are and what we want to be seen as. But if somebody else has any other thoughts on that.
Well, this is Tanya. I mean, to be fair, the original logo was not in there to vote upon, was it?
This is true. Yeah, the original logo was
So you
not in
can't
there.
vote on something that's not there. I
Mhm.
would like to take this into an executive session briefly.
Say again.
So there,
Okay.
there's a script with very specific
Yep.
script language. And I guess just for context, so if the Board of Trustees, for community members, if the Board of Trustees opts to go into an executive session right now, we will lock the meeting and all community members would be placed into a waiting room until the board came out of that private session. And for those of you in the room, you would have to exit the room until they were done.
I'm not really in favor of that. How do other people feel about that?
I would suggest maybe we have more of a discussion potentially first, just to get folks' thoughts, and then and then we can consider.
Okay.
So wait, hold on. We do know which ones were the top voted from that survey? Are they not in the packet?
Yeah, so it's in the link. So if you go into
Right,
the,
but how do I know from the link which ones were?
so up at the top, they will have, so Luke,
Where is that?
is that not showing up for you?
The results.
I guess that's what I did not understand. I'm on the wrong. Well, that wasn't clear to me. So I'm not really prepared for this stuff.
Okay.
It's the first time.
Okay. So you got it though? You're seeing them?
No, not yet. I'm scrolling wildly.
Okay, no problem.
I think I found it. Oh yeah. Okay. I see. Well then.
So that's
So
one of
what
them.
about those boopy things or whatever they're called? Are those still something that is in this contract, or what was that all about?
Yeah, so the boops were part of that first iteration, that first draft. Godot decided to go ahead and forego those because all of the feedback was just very, it wasn't necessarily, while that I think came out as one of the more positive aspects of that first draft, there still wasn't like widely huge support. And so they decided to forego with them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So basically, what we're getting out of all of this is one of those logos that are presented here.
No,
Has-
not entirely. Oh,
Oh,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say, so that there is still a requirement for the full creative identity scope, which would be, your logo, your tagline, your colors, just kind of a full kind of thematic markup. I think ultimately why there's so much focus on the logo was that was the biggest area of concern when Godot brought this forward. And so I realize it may seem disjointed, but it still has to be, in order to satisfy the grant requirement, the full package.
So what is our move here? What is the point of this discussion? Are we trying to pick one, or are we just discussing this with the public and seeing what people think.
Yeah, so if there were particular ones that were popping out to you, everyone can kind of look at the link, but clearly the moose, the hula hooping moose, had quite a bit of traction. And there's also some potential, we can't necessarily replicate that exact design. One, it was AI generated. Two, it gets very difficult to see when it's, narrowed or when it gets small. It's got a lot going on in it. But that is the most popular. And so I think there is also a sentiment that folks are wanting our more whimsical side to come out a little bit more. We're okay saying we're unique and we don't necessarily follow the grain. However, I will also say that, our A1 and our A2 also got quite a few votes. So there's this, I think this cohort of group of folks that really like the nature aspects and, the fact that we have our mountains and our trees and our reservoir, that really resonates with a lot of folks, as does a dancing moose.
I think one thing that I kind of pulled from reading a lot of the comments on all of these is that there was a lot of sort of reluctant voting of people who seemed like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll vote for this one, but none of these really resonate with me. I don't know if that means we're just way off track or if it just means there needs to be more fine tuning that happens. And that's sort of a question I have of like, how many more revisions, how much more fine tuning, how much more are we going to do before somebody has to pick something?
Yeah, so because the in-person session that we had, we articulated like if there is a particular theme or like a tagline that you might like a lot better that's not necessarily with the particular logo, that can be swapped out. Fonts are easy to swap out if, for instance, we wanted, people have called it the spider sun. I believe it's A2. It looks like a black spider coming down. It's like, yeah, that's easy to alter, right? So it doesn't look like death trap spider is dropping down onto you. So like some of those things absolutely tweakable is what I would say.
And are we obligated to choose one of these logos?
No, not necessarily. We are not.
So did anybody see what came in the email today? The resident of ours who's been playing with some fun logos, and there was that really fun bear with the sunglasses.
Yes.
Anybody like that one? I thought that was great.
Yeah, I do too.
It's cute.
I'm wondering if we couldn't, and then there was a couple other incarnations of that. I'm wondering if we can't bring the survey back out in a couple weeks with some submissions like this from locals and really push the survey and maybe put our original logo in there as well and give it one more chance for the public to respond. Since we only had, looks like 50 or 60 people even filled out the survey.
Oh, we had way more than that.
Really? Because I saw 22 votes for one, 22 votes for another, 2 for this, 2 for that.
The moose got 99.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that when I.
Oh yeah, keep scrolling, keep going down. You'll see. Yeah, so we had well over 100.
So the moose with the hula hoop is not a GoDot design. So if we chose that, we would be breaking ties with GoDot.
Well, so
they can't appropriate that.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying they can't appropriate it. It's not, it's like kind of a common image. It's nobody's image.
However, as we have talked about, so, combining a couple of the images. So folks have seen the howling moose. The howling moose is on one of the renditions. I believe it's, forgive me, the number's not coming off the top of my head, but the howling moose, if it was propped up on its legs and had the hula hoop around it, like we could get to a likeness without directly appropriating, the specific string cheese incident, hula hooping moose, not using something that's AI generated, right? We could get, if because so many people are so interested and really love that whimsical side, we could combine it with a more nature-esque background and potentially still make folks happy. Any other clarifying questions?
So I guess what I don't fully understand, are you saying that we cannot take part of what Godot has put together and leave the logo aside to satisfy the grant? Like, that's what I was confused about.
Yeah, Colorado Tourism Office really just says, you know, you need to meet your deliverable, which is a full campaign.
Uh-huh.
Now, how we define the term campaign is
How we get to that, though, is kind of up to
right.
us.
I mean, it obviously it can't just be a logo, and it can't just be a tagline. It can't just be like one thing. It has
Yeah.
to be all components.
But so if we took, for instance, the color schemes and the boops and I don't know what else was there.
yeah, the
Well,
tagline, but I know that still maybe isn't
I
totally
feel like,
landed on.
yeah,
but-
I feel like if we took everything, because I mean, I like the boops a lot. I think I was a big fan of the way that they were produced. I feel like they're more net than anything else that was in that presentation. But the logo and the tagline, I think, are the sites of major contention.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure we're going to get there. I'm just not sure we're actually going to get to where we need to be on it, other than going another direction or staying with the current logo and just incorporating the rest of what Godot did, right? Like, I'm just saying, as to be practical here. I mean, maybe we will, maybe the board will vote on something and it will be clear and there will be a winner, but I'm not really very interested in any of the ones that had the most votes here, personally. Like, I don't really want there to be a moose on it at all. I'm not sure what, like, I'm not interested in that. And I don't like A1 and A2. I find them to look like clip art. They don't really feel like a very unique logo. They feel like AI generated to me as well. I'm not pleased with any of these. I mean, weirdly enough, I'm like, you know, it just appeals to my own sensibilities, but I'm like more interested in the reworked version of the original idea, which has like some representational elements built into the, you know, original logo that was
The leaning
proposed.
rocks.
Yeah, which was D3 or something.
D3.
Like, that one looks the most compelling to me, right?
He was
But
the only one that got 0 votes.
it's got 0 votes. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm just not sure that we're going to get anywhere with this. So let's be practical. What can we get from what we paid for? Like, what can we, you know, take and move forward with and use and be productive with? And where do we then just draw the line and say, we haven't gotten to the logo, or we're going to go with someone else for the logo, or we're going to community source it, or something like that.
Yeah, so I think in talking with Colorado Tourism Office, I think, yes, there's kind of some couple options. I think they might not view it as a complete campaign if it's just color schemes, the boops. I mean, that's kind of, and so we then run the risk of having to pay back the remaining of the grant. That's one thing. The other thing on the table is to just kind of take the work product that's there and then, you know, say that that's maybe the Godot portion of this, and then potentially go out to community survey. That's an option, or, you know, or continue to go through this. I just think whatever choice we have to make, we'd have to go back to the Colorado Tourism Office and just kind of figure out where in their like procurement policy and this contract do they feel like we are, and are we at a paying back, or can we continue to satisfy this just maybe in kind of a combination of a lot of different options here? And then they're very open to talking with us. We actually meet with them tomorrow morning, depending on what happens today, to know how to move forward. But there are options on the table to do kind of a multifaceted approach where there's maybe a Godot piece, a community piece, and a town logo.
And
Yeah.
Miranda, remind us of when the grant is due.
We need to file by April. We don't have a ton of time.
What
Yeah, that's
was
what I
the
mean,
winning
like-
tagline?
So I think there's a combination between it's different up here, unique by nature, also seem to get a lot of votes. I would say it's sort of surrounded around those two.
Strange magic.
Strange Magic got some votes for sure, but not as much as those two.
I mean, I think we're gonna have a really hard time with this because the boops I like the concept of, but they looked so dark and depressing and scary, like Halloween pictures, that I wouldn't want them on my desk. So I think I don't think any of us are gonna agree on anything here.
Miranda, what
Don't know what
guidance
to
do you
do.
need tonight?
Would you
I've
like
got
me
a-
to?
I've got a note. I think something that I haven't heard anybody talk about. I haven't been to all of these meetings, but something I haven't heard anyone talk about is, everybody's saying we want the logo to represent us, represent Nederland, represent, who we are. This is also like our official town logo that goes on paperwork and stationery, and it's a government seal basically, which doesn't mean it can't be whimsical and silly in some ways too. But I think that starting out your decision-making process with saying, what do we need this logo to do for us, gives us a box around which to make the decision. Because you're never going to get everybody to agree on, especially pulling in the whole community. Not everyone is going to agree about what they like. It's too subjective. But
Yeah, I mean, I like something that says Nederland, Colorado, and says established when it was established. And like that is the rest of it.
That's-
It's all too busy.
That's what
Right,
we
I mean,
have
which is a little
already.
bit
Why
what I
don't
was
we
saying
just
with
keep what
going-
we have?
yeah, it's a little bit what I was saying about like, what about our current logo? I mean, it has some trees and a river in the mountains, and it says Nederland, Colorado. If it's a logo that's primary purpose is tourism related and to present like a marketing pitch that inspires people to understand what Nederland is like to the people who don't live here, that's a different thing than.
It's not, just to clarify, it's not a marketing pitch, it's tourism management. That was something that's really important to the community, is that we do not want more people here. We want to manage the ones that are here.
Right. So I think that, keeping this as, I don't want to say like an official looking seal, is perhaps part of what we should be looking for.
Maybe I could add, Godot has offered to kind of clean up our logo. I think the one challenge is like, no one's got the original. And so it's just kind of.
Well,
like,
has anybody reached out to the person who made it?
I don't know who made our original
Well, I'd
logo.
know who made it. I'll send him a text right now.
Well, if anybody who does graphic design for a living, and Luke, you're probably as familiar with this as anyone, I don't think it's hard to take our existing logo and turn it into a vector file essentially, which cleans up all the edges and sharpens it up as an image, and that can be
Do it by the
expanded.
end of this meeting.
Right. It's quite simple, and it might even modernize it ever so slightly in such a way that it gives us the polish that we're kind of looking for here.
No. I guess what I'm saying is I want to find a way to get the board to be able to vote on something that doesn't make us have to pay back any money.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I want to get to at this point. Like, yes, having a good town logo is great, but also being 20 grand in the hole is not an acceptable result of the
Right. I mean,
process.
and we want to be able to make use of what Godot has invested. I mean, they've put a lot of time into this, and just because not everybody likes the logo doesn't mean that there's nothing of value to take out of that. And I think that we should, whatever we choose to do, we should choose to do it in a way that we can take advantage of a lot of the effort that's been put into it.
I'm glad you're here, Luke.
I guess for me, I think at that point, we do have, this contract with Godot. And if that's the kind of the desire, the guidance of just like keep with current and clean it up. Like, yes, I realize anyone can do it, but we have an agreement in place. Let them do it. Let them pull together kind of the whole brand campaign. Let them provide that final deliverable. Figure out what our logo is or our tagline is based on some of that feedback, and let them come back to you with kind of a full vote on, and recognizing that we're switching gears from these logos and just gonna keep it simple.
What are we
Sounds good to
trying?
me.
What are we trying to achieve right now with this discussion?
I think we just want direction. So ideally, this is set to come back before the Board of Trustees on the 20th for you to vote. So we can, because they still need to do the final deliverables, which is, the documentary that kind of does the whole, how did we get here, and kind of shares, it's little snippets of people sharing why they love Nederland. And that's kind of a part of that tourism management, and that it's our town expressing what they love and expect from visitors. And then also printed material, digital material, and we'd love to have the month of March to kind of finalize those, because CTO also has to approve it before April. And so we,
Now, Miranda, where's the component about, hey, don't feed the moose, and hey, don't, drive on the ice? I mean, like, I thought this was also like a tourist management. There was going to be some sort of like advice given on this, or no? It's just the logo.
no, it's the creative identity. So it's not just the logo, it's the creative identity as a whole. But I think the point of that is then we'll have kind of poster materials that we plug in that messaging, because obviously we're still part of that Do Colorado Right, Do Nederland Right campaign, which is where the messages come from that everyone loves, but just not the name, Do Nederland Right. But we'll take that same messaging and then plug it into poster boards or social media campaigns that is with our font, with our colors, with our logo, with our creative identity. So when you see it, you're like, that's Nederland, and Nederland's communicating to us what our expectations are of visitors. It's just done so in a way that's not the Colorado Tourism's office posters. It's our own stuff that we then push out.
I just want to clarify, just because it could sound like a mixed message of this. Nicole said, this isn't marketing, tourism, promotional pitch, but we're also like talking about how this is social media, about how people, what do they expect when they come to Nederland? We're not, I know there's a lot of people who are like, just stay out, put a no entry sign as our town logo, but, we should be clear about that in both in terms of like the community's perception of what we're doing and the tourism grant, perception of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it goes, I think it's a little tricky in that, of course, this is Colorado Tourism Office grant, and so that already kind of sets that up. But I think our messaging has always been that this is about managing tourism. People are coming, whether we want it or not, they're coming, and we should be able to maintain our expectations of those tourists. So it's like, hi, welcome. We're so glad to have you in Nederland. And here's what our expectations are. And we utilize our creative campaign and identity to communicate that messaging. But yet those expectations of tourism are the same expectations we have of one another as neighbors and as community members. And so that messaging goes far and wide. And if we can start to really kind of manage that impact of tourism, it's going to ultimately lead to a better life and a better outcome for our residents. So while I think people love to look at tourism visitors as separate from community residents, they have to have that synergy of working together. And really why we are so passionate about applying for this is we feel like through creative branding and creative campaigning, we can help really frame that messaging far and wide for both visitors, tourists, and our community members.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, this is Billy. I'm about to come back in. Are we in the clarifying questions stage of this? I've been listening for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I would just ask, and thanks, Tom, for covering, that, I think a lot of these have been pretty much clarifying questions, so we keep up with those and things we want the public to hear, and then we move it to public comment when you're ready.
I'd just like to make one last clarifying point of kind of how we anticipate the next steps of, what do we expect to extract from this conversation, and then what's going to come back to us, and what are we expected to do with that when they come back?
Who's that addressed to?
Whoever knows the answer.
Okay.
Nicole?
So in terms of the expectation, again, it would look at the data, give direction to town staff as to what we want to see next. And then if that is something that we can have a vote on for the next meeting, great. If not, we need to give alternative direction.
So we could have like a whole nother round of commentary, feedback, and then
if that's what the board decides.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're like, people understand if we're going to be expected to vote on something next time we see this again, or if we're going to be, doing more rounds of feedback. And I don't know how much patience everybody has for it, but if we have a hard deadline, we need to make sure we set ourselves up to.
I think
not
for,
time out.
I think for town staff and I think for us, it's guidance on the logo, maybe a little guidance on that tagline. I know we haven't quite talked about it just yet. Guidance on the boops, I think would be really helpful. Otherwise, I think we've got it from there.
Yep.
But those are kind of the three that seem to be a little bit unknown. It never felt like anyone was really like challenged by the font or the colors, but there's another opportunity to discuss those again since you're not looking at them. But it's really those three categories that I think we need guidance.
Tanya,
Miranda?
your turn.
I'm sorry, what are those three categories you said, Miranda?
The logo, the tag, just guidance on how you want us to go forward on the logo, the tagline, and the boops.
The boops, I think they need to bring us some new palette for them. I think they're very creative, but the dark colors are not, I mean, that's my opinion. That's just one out of,
No, I think
I'm
you're right,
reading all the
Tanya.
comments on the survey and I really think we need to bring it back with a few more choices. But I know, and then maybe give what the winner of that choice to GoDot to do the work so we don't have to give back the money. But I'm reading all the comments now and I'm just like, whoa, there's very few that are like very excited about the logos and the tagline.
That's a little bit what I was saying earlier. It just seems like, there's a lot of sort of reluctant voting. If people
Yeah.
say there's
Yeah,
not
they're
a
voting
ton
for the
of
moose
enthusiasm.
just because it's funny.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, to kind of clarify what I was saying about like, what do we expect this logo to be? I mean, I think the moose logo is great. It looked great on a t-shirt. It's like, that's a fun logo to have as part of something you see around town, but as an official town logo, it doesn't seem like it fits the bill as much as I like it. And as much as it seems like the community likes it.
Yeah.
Miranda, I'd ask, do we need to have this image be the same one that's the town seal and serves the purpose for tourism?
No, I think that there is maybe a desire to have some like continuity a little bit between, so that way, like when you see certain colors or font or logo, you're like, that's Town of Nederland. And recognizing that the Town of Nederland has a kind of a government standpoint. And I think you all noted when we moved away from the Tourism Advisory Board that we're probably not going to play a lot in that space because we're really now working with the chamber. And so, yes, I do think in many ways this does become your municipal government logo. And to Trustee Miller's point, I mean, as staff, we did talk about that too, is like, we think some of these are super cool, but putting it on a grant application or like a violation notice could be a little weird. So.
I mean, this is exactly what I was hoping Godot would what I was hoping we wouldn't do is do this like throw a bunch of logos out there and do a survey thing. Like, I just don't think that this process is that valuable. Like, I would rather, I mean, never mind. It doesn't really, it's done now. I just don't think that this is the right way to go about it because, when it comes to things like this, like design, art, like it is subjective. Everybody thinks that their perspective is the perspective that grounds reality, right? So like, opinions are like the things we all have, right? And it's just, there's just no like coherent, objective way to approach this. So, I mean, if D3 were on the table, I'd vote for it today, to be perfectly honest with you all. I would vote for that today. I think it looks like a government seal. I think it includes a mountain and a reservoir. I think it makes the most sense to me. And it has enough like uniqueness that it sets us apart from other mountain towns. I'm looking at other mountain towns logos and I find them all to be relatively hideous. Like, I'm not really that jazzed by any of them. Aspen's is kind of nice because it's simple, right? But maybe I could live with A2 because at least it's like the mountain formation specific to the view from Nederland, right? Like I can see Kiowa there and Apache Peak and like it has at least some kind of specificity, which I think is kind of important. But, other than that, I'm not feeling any of these really. And I'm not feeling the animal ones personally. I'm not too psyched by them. And yeah, just saying where I'm at. I don't know really what to do with that. But I would also happily just vote for keeping the logo we already have.
I'm kind of with you on D3. I feel like D3 is the logo that they came up with by writing down and taking note of the feedback that I gave them last time. So I kind of feel like I have some stake in that one. I didn't necessarily want them to just throw their work that they presented to us last time out the window. I wasn't trying to give them that feedback per se. And I feel like that one aligns with them making their best pitch to us with their best work last meeting, and then taking our feedback and making some minor tweaks to it and coming back again and saying, here, this is what we've come up with after that last
That takes
round
what
of
was, I
feedback.
think,
Yeah.
initially like fairly inaccessible and resolves, I think, that problem.
So we might want to move to public comment now. I feel like we're past the clarifying questions.
We are.
Okay.
Yes. I'm just going to throw in, actually, I like the boobs. When it comes to the informative stuff that Tanya was talking about, I think that's kind of the thing that they'd be perfect for, but that's my one comment.
But yeah, and we said it in the first meeting when they came, that they're too dark and they're not popping off the page when you put a color behind it. So I think that that's easily solvable though. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
I do
simple,
too.
that's a slider in Photoshop,
Yeah.
to just brighten them up, make them a little bit more visible and make them pop more with more contrast. Like, I think that can be resolved.
Yep, I agree. I don't like the name boobs, but I like the boobs. Go into public comment. First in the room, if you have any public comment on the logo, please come to the podium. I think both you do, John.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
3 minutes.
Okay, first off, how many firms were consulted before you hired these guys?
How many applied? 15?
15 applied?
Okay, and then what'd you do? Take the cheapest or the most expensive?
It went through probably a 20-point criteria that we used to assess things like
I
creativity.
think the cheapest guy would have done a better job.
So
Going.
First off, what was Nederland founded on?
Mining.
All right,
I
shouldn't
mean,
that be the logo? Because
That
we are a
feedback was
mining
given.
town, we're not a moose town.
that feedback.
Moose
Well,
came
actually,
back.
moose were here before mining. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah, I know,
Were
but
they?
moose came
Were they?
back after they were reintroduced.
Actually, you're right. Yeah.
They
Hey,
were
moose.
reintroduced.
Okra.
So mining, trading, Native Americans, things like that. That's what Nederland was founded on. Actually, it was a Ute trading post before it was a mine.
Right. That's true.
Yes, we gave him that feedback.
Then where is any of it? I see moose. I see a lake that looks like a tornado. But other than that, I don't see anything that pops and says Nederland.
Yeah. I mean, at the last time they were in front of us, the two things we talked
mean,
about
we
were
could've-
music and mining.
We could have got the elementary school to have a contest and got better logos. That's all I got to say. It was a waste of money.
Thanks, John.
Hi, am I supposed to say my name and stuff?
Your name and just your relationship to Netherlands.
Laura Lynn Saya, resident since 2000 and volunteer firefighter for almost that whole time. So before advocating for or against anything, I want to say that when I first became aware of the issue happening, my first response was, don't we have a logo? I thought we had a logo. The logo we have it's fine. It's nice. I always thought it was nice. And then the other thing that I want to say is, well, we're in this process now. And I think there's some merit in trying to bear it through and going through with the process. I wouldn't rule out using our old logo, but I definitely wouldn't rule out going forward and seeing if we can come up with something better. And I personally feel like it's possible to not just come up with something that's acceptable, but to come up with something that's awesome. This is Nederland. We can come up with something awesome. So here's what I think about that. When I was at the the meeting last week, I actually, my very first table I stood at was the hula moose because it made me laugh. And I was like, oh, that's hilarious. And then I changed and I moved over to A2. And so my caution about the hula moose is what kind of seems like a good party joke and stuff might not seem so fresh in a few years. And we just, I mean, I participated in the first 7 Frozen Dead Guy days and had a lot of fun, but I think we all had enough Frozen and Dead and the image of that, like, that's our town. We just got rid of that. Be careful choosing this thing. I think the moose is funny. I mean, that was my first thing that I went over to. It would be great well, I barely understand what a boop is, but it would be great on a t-shirt or at a music event or something. But it is an invasive species. We have a lot of other species. I've been told that hula hooping image thing can be bought on t-shirts in Estes that was created by AI and that it's uncopyrightable. And it's also not graphically ready to go as a logo. So the one that I do support is A2. And in particular, with a few changes, I think the trees are silly. And I think that the sun should be hollow and much daintier. I think that it reads as a black spider because it's really bold. Anyways, if it was just hollow with maybe a little bit of dainty lines coming out of it, it could be a sun or a moon, depending on how the viewer sees it. Now, as far as depending on how the viewer sees it, oh, by the way, I wanted to mention that it's actually a lot like the original town logo. Okay.
There's a time.
Okay. A few people have made the comment that, oh, the negative space in there looks like a bird. And I say don't get rid of the bird. I say get rid of the trees, make the sun hollow, and make the bird a bird or a dragon or a phoenix or some kind of creature. I don't know if you've ever seen Bev Doolittle's paintings where you look at it, nice landscape. Oh my God, there's a bear in there. They're really cool paintings. That in logo form. And I believe Godot gave the board some of those workups after last week's meeting. And that's why I came, was hoping to see them. And that could be awesome.
Thanks, appreciate it. Did we, I mean, I'm not seeing any workups other than, you know.
This is really just to continue to get feedback.
Okay, so yeah, that hasn't happened. We don't have workup specifically on the feedback from last week. I mean, a lot of it's presentation that we saw, and then the survey is what people have been participating in.
Some of them we did, like, remember the crop lines, right? We did work on like getting rid of those so it didn't look so much like cornrows. Remember, like that was some of the feedback on A1. But yeah, we haven't gotten like any like major revisions or anything.
He texted me and said that he gave the board one with a bird, one with a dragon, and one with a phoenix. Because that's his team's, they like that.
I haven't seen it.
I have not.
Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry, the person in the room had just said that she was texted by the consultant saying that he had given a couple of variations of a phoenix bird, whatnot. No, we have not received that, just to be on the record.
Thank you, Orlin. Anyone else in the room? If not, we'll go online. Go ahead and raise your hand, or
Teresa Robertson.
Teresa, go ahead.
Hi there. So this is all very unfortunate. I was on the meeting where we picked Godot. They did a great job selling themselves. I think the board did a good job picking who they picked. They seemed, Beckett did a great job selling himself, that he was hip to who we are. He was going to listen. And that's not what he delivered. That's not who he was. I've been in all the meetings. I was, a part of the process. I took the time to come last week, and it's really unfortunate that what they were presenting themselves to be is not what they've sold. I do not like D3. I don't think we're a bunch of rocks. I'm concerned that we're going to lose a lot of money. It just, there seems to be a lot of agrimony in this process. The booths, I think if they got lightened up, I would be cool with that. I voted for the A's for whatever that means. But I think, you know, we're in the middle of a process and we're out of time and money, and that's very concerning to me. And the reason someone had John is some guy in the room who was talking. The
Yeah,
reason
John.
we're here is this was the one thing that united everybody on social. I mean, whether over 600 people that came out to complain in social media. So this is important. So what we do going forward is going to be really important. And I don't have any great guiding light. It's just unfortunate that what we were pitched, we weren't listened to. So this is what happens when I don't think there's authentic listening and respect in a process. And my vote would be for Miranda to figure out from the tourism industry, from the grant people, how we don't lose our shirt in this, because I think that the desire to do this, I don't think was a poor choice. I just think the process that happened in the past 6 months, it wasn't successful, unfortunately. And I think this also alludes to what Eric was talking about earlier about when we were talking about aligning with the peak to peak region. I think it's also a cultural divide down, you know, a down below firm versus something from up here. So thank you guys for being prudent with this. And I don't have any, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's really unfortunate we're here. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. Who else has their hand up? I don't have my in front of me.
No one at this time.
Does anyone else have a public comment on the logo as a discussion item today? If we can't hear you, I don't know if anyone's talking, but just so you know, we can't. So let's give another minute, see if anyone has any comments on this, and then we'll bring it back to the board for final discussion. Okay. I'll bring it back to the board. And the question before the board is, does the board have any questions, comments, or feedback for Godot Creative on the town of Netherlands branding and creative identity?
I just want to come back to Trustee Corvalon had asked for an executive session earlier. Trustee Corvalon, are you still interested in that? Tanya, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Oh, I don't think it's necessary. Well, because it sounds like we can't really afford to lose any money on this. So we have to work with Godot and see if they can keep finding something that people like. I agree with Eric. This is a bad process because we all have our opinions. We certainly can't pick the one that got 0 votes. I mean, that would just not work. We were given.
I have no qualms about doing that, but
well, I do. I mean, that's I don't like it. It's not my. So I'm not going to vote for that one. I mean, it's ridiculous. This whole thing's ridiculous. It's too bad they gave us that image without letting anybody see it first to get public feedback prior. And so I personally would like to see some more choices coming out that people are excited about besides the hula hoop. I don't think I can pick any one of those and be like, I love it. I would just at this point give them the old one logo and say, okay, we just gave you $20,000 to take our old logo and tighten it up. Bye. That's where I'm at right now. It's either that, like, I really like what that guy Will's been sending us. I think they're really great. That's my opinion, right? That's the problem. And so I'm either for putting out a new survey with the top choices and some more choices and the original one in there, or just going with the original and telling Godot, or however you say their name, to tighten it up. That's where I'm at. I mean, I don't think we need an executive session because we already know we'd lose a bunch of money, so.
So I guess I want to clarify, that's not quite what I said. I think there's like really three options on the table for you. There's just saying, okay, this didn't work out, and we pay back. We then pull what Godot has done to date and then pay back the remaining funds. You kind of stay the course, continue to work with Godot to kind of finalize this out. Or again, you kind of take what Godot has done to date and then maybe you go a different route on the logo, which could be like community generated. So you still have like kind of some options before you. I think that's really just kind of like, what's that direction? You know, and recognizing, I guess, to me, it's like if the desire is to just clean up the logo, and yes, I realize anyone could do that, just let the consultants you have do that. There's no reason to go out to the community for that. I think the only reason to maybe go out to the community is to, if you were going to do a kind of some sort of survey or some sort of community design campaign. But again, if I feel like that ultimate is just like stay the course and redo our logo, just let the consultants you have do that.
I mean, the current,
Community design campaign, and that winner, we could, and they were okay with it, we could give that to Godot and we wouldn't lose our money then if they like worked it in their rest of their deliverables. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, there are some kind of contract components for this, and I don't necessarily want to be debating their contract in public. I think that that's something that town staff we'd have to discuss with Godot. You know, I think you also have a situation where you've got like other entities who are saying, I can do this for you. And again, those are kind of, that's challenging, you know, if there's partnership potentially between Godot and other entities, and then sure, those are things we can really navigate as we go forward. And I think that's ultimately like where your direction tonight really helps us as staff know what we're going back to Godot with and going back to CTO with in terms of next steps.
And just a point of clarification, you know, we're talking a lot about the budget and losing money or having to pay money back. And just to help, I think, at least me and maybe some other people understand like exactly what money is coming from where. And right, I mean, this is mostly grant money, and we would only have to pay it back if we didn't deliver anything to the state tourism board.
Right. I mean, right now I would say it's hard to, there's definitely, I don't think any space where we're paying back the full 20,000 because we have some forms of deliverables, whether people like it or not. We have that logo they brought before, we have a tagline, we have boops, we have colors, everything they brought back in January. We technically have all that. And so I do think, yes, the makings of the deliverable. Do we have a creative campaign? Yes. Does the community like the creative campaign? Not so much. So I think that's the difference. So I think where we are at risk of paying the remaining funds, which is approximately $10,000, like that's what we're at risk of paying back if we really can't reach kind of a completion when it comes to the creative identity components. And $20,000 came from Colorado Tourism Office, $5,000 came from Town Match.
Right. That's what I was trying to get at. It's like, you know, where's this money coming from? When people talking about losing our money, like, you know, it's.
Well, we're going to lose 5,000 anyway. That's.
Well, we're spending 5,000 and we're hoping to get out of it a creative identity that we can use for this Colorado Tourism Grant. And whether we use what Godot has built as part of that, that's our own decision. I would also point out that we are not going to pick a logo and a tagline that everybody loves.
Yeah.
Our best hope is something that not everybody hates.
or just unify everyone. We all hate it, then we're all on the same page, right?
Well, we
I
know
think
which
we
level
draw
we know which level it is.
Yeah, that's what happened the first time around. Jesse, did you have any thoughts? I was hoping to grab you before you forgot.
I mean, like the original logo, I always felt has got somewhere down the years got squished. It's an oval instead of a circle, and it should be a circle. So vectorizing that and making it an actual circle that isn't squished, like I would be happy with that happening. Like I'd feel pretty good about that happening.
I mean, the original Godot.
Yeah, no, our
Oh,
current
okay,
logo,
yeah, okay, yeah.
right? Like over the years and missing files and all of that, it just got mangled, right? And it's always looked kind of unpro to me because of that. But
So I would like to perhaps propose an idea here where we have a few of these that did pretty well, that did well. I would say A2 did well. A1 did well. Like I said, there was a little bit of tweaking that we did, so it made it look like it wasn't crop rows. That was an overwhelming feedback for A1 since we do not live in an area with crops. And that we take potentially B4, but give it a hula hoop, just for the fact that folks were sort of galvanizing around that. You could probably do a very discreet one to where folks would not know necessarily unless you looked closer. There's also a little bit of whimsy in the fact that moose don't howl, in case, nobody picked that up. But we take some of those that have done relatively well, in addition to perhaps some of the community-driven ones, and allow folks to go through one more round. And ultimately, then we've got to decide.
Yeah, I'd like to see that moose if we go with that one on the B4, like it's an elk with a moose antler. They just need to make it a moose.
Or make it a moose, or
why not just make it an elk?
make it an elk,
Yeah.
make it a milk,
Yeah, I mean,
because it's
Well,
an
what
elk.
about
fine. Then the screaming makes more sense.
what
Right.
about including some community work that we've
Yeah,
been
that's what I just
speaking-
said, is that we would also have a couple of the community-driven ones. So the bear one that just came through, it's Ned. There's nothing around that. And then we could also have the original logo cleaned up. So we would have potentially 5 potentials to get from.
If those ones that Godot has that I was talking about, can you include those too?
Oh, sure. So you were talking about, oh yeah, and to clarify, on the record, yes, the participant, remind me of your name again. Laura Lynn. Yeah. And so, yeah, okay, so Laura Lynn was talking about the reworking of negative space on A2 to make it look more defined as either the dragon, the phoenix, or the bird, kind of a, yeah.
And getting rid of the trees, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so there
those
was,
trees
yeah,
they don't belong there. They just kind of like,
Yeah.
in my opinion, right? Yeah.
right.
And the spider sun.
And the spider sun,
Yeah.
yes, the really scary spider sun. So that's, I recommend that we get kind of the last set to surface. Because I do think that one of the things that this community does like is the choice. We need to communicate that, this logo of the moose, the hula hooping moose, we've said it, but I think it takes the board's direction to say that particular one is not going to work. We can't move forward with that one, but here's an alternative, and then allow folks. So in addition to these, the A2, take B4, turn it into some sort of hula hooping moose, the original town logo, and then grab a couple of the community driven ones, and ultimately let's put it to vote, and then let's make a decision. Would be my recommendation, but would love other ideas.
I would love all those things to be reworked up and then just brought back here.
Instead of put to a vote.
Yeah.
That's another option. Absolutely.
Do we need to
But you know
extend
what?
meeting?
It doesn't matter. They're going to vote anyway.
Until 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, they can
Lie.
vote me right out of office.
Oh, no. I'm saying they'll put the social commentary.
Oh,
So,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever. They're not here.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a lame duck. I can say what I want.
yes.
So that's, so we could either put it to vote, we could say, nope, let's just get it reworked, let's just bring it to the board, 2 options on the table. Any other ideas to surface?
3 options.
What's the third option?
Oh, wait, B4 reworked and A2, was it? reworked?
So A2 reworked, B4 reworked, and then the original logo.
Okay, that's what I meant by 3 options. Was
But
like
then
the-
also a couple of
Yeah,
community
okay,
driven
and
ones.
and that's fine. I thought you said 2 options. And that was,
Well, 2 options being, we get those options, we bring it directly to the board for vote, or we put it out to survey for the community, and then we vote. Those are the 2 options I was talking about.
Thanks, Alec. Thank you. I like putting it out to the community for a survey personally.
Yeah, I would agree with the survey, even though it slows us down and just kind of almost breeds more dissent, but people obviously care about this, and I think it's important that we at least listen to what people have to say.
We could listen to what people have to say if they came here and said it. You know, instead of just raging online on a survey.
Yeah,
It's
but-
really tiresome, guys. It's really tiresome.
So
But
to-
people did participate in the Godot survey. I mean, assuming everybody just voted once, I mean, there was a couple hundred people who participated there, and you know, that's I think that's
Boring.
reasonable.
And we're getting letters, that would, comments to us, emails to us. You're going to be a keyboard warrior if you don't run for office again, so.
So, to Trustee Ismail's point, if we did just bring it back to vote for the board, that could hopefully be a forcing function for the community to show up and to cast their vote here. So
No, that's going to be a 2-hour.
So what?
then
Well,
that's
I'd rather they just do the survey and we can read it and evaluate with looking at data in front of my face instead of having 100 people give us 3 minutes and ask us a bunch of questions. And I like seeing, I'm a visual person. I like the data. I like to read what people said. I don't see
I
what's
agree
so
with that.
bad about a survey.
Well, a week ago, when we were here with people and there was people in the room, less than we would have liked, but that's a much better, richer experience. You really get a better sense of what people want.
Tom and Nicole, do you, either of you have a preference between the 2 options that you presented?
I could go with either one. I mean, sure, you expedite the process by just bringing it directly back to the board. And I know our folks like a choice. They like to be able to cast that vote. They like to be a part of the process, even if they're not here. And I get it. Being here is part of the process. I totally get that. And
I'm happy to just nod for this and get through the conversation.
Yeah, how about you, Tom? Because we have 3 who want to go to the public with a survey. So if we have a 4th, we can move on with our conversation tonight.
You have a 4th?
You're partial towards public survey? Okay, well then it sounds like we have our 4. I'm kind of with Nicole. I could go either way. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. So I think Tanya, Luke, Billy, and Tom all want to do Nicole's option with then getting public input before our next meeting as well. And then ultimately we'll make our own choice.
What about the tagline?
yeah, so I mean, okay, so yeah, a couple of things. I think irregardless of whatever logo comes to us or to survey, it needs to have the established in our year.
Yes.
I would just like to get some nods around that
Yes,
we're all in
yes.
agreement with that. Yeah, it just sort of we know, right?
The government logo.
It's a government logo.
Has
We-
that feeling.
Yeah. And I think it's a proud point, to, John's point, what were we founded on, right? That year is symbolic. So that's one thing that I would recommend that gets done. And then, the other thing I would suggest is Miranda and I will work with Godot to make sure that those options come forward. I guess this is the call out to the community. If there are any other ideas that you'd want to surface, get them in as soon as possible, so that we can make that as a part of our assessment. And there was something else I was going to say. Damn it.
Oh, I was going to ask, can we consider it a full campaign, Miranda, if we just don't have a tagline?
Oh, that was it. Tagline.
Like, what do we need a tagline for?
Yeah, I mean, again, the what is the full campaign isn't defined, but you
Okay,
can't.
I
like,
was just wondering,
almost like
maybe they
one-
enumerate it. Maybe they said like in the grant, like including a tagline.
No,
logo.
I don't
and
think
one
so.
of the feedback from CTO today was like, why don't you keep it simple?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so regarding the taglines, that's the thing I forgot, was I think to just keep it simple, we surfaced the top 3 taglines that have come out of this line, this era of data, and surface that. And so basically we'd be selecting the logo and then the tagline.
Can we also give the option of no tagline?
Absolutely. That would be the 4th option.
Because
So-
a tagline could be Nederland established 1874.
There you go. Yeah. So it'd be the 4 or 5 logos and then 4 taglines, one of them being no tagline as an option.
I like that.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That's what I needed to remind myself or remember.
We can get some feedback on the boops.
I mean, I think that we've all said it, like lighter, more contrast, more visible.
Is that majority?
I think we generally all liked boops, and Tanya and some others have said to lighten them up a little bit so they look less scary. And I don't feel opposed to that. I don't think anybody is.
And they just don't show up that
Object.
well on the colored backgrounds.
Yeah.
If they could just come out more.
I would agree.
I agree.
I think out of that original campaign, the boops were the more positive part of that. Even community members responded positively with it.
Regarding the tagline, I don't know if there's still any opportunity for, creativity on that side, but
Yes.
I'd really like what candidate John Stevens was saying with regard to what we were founded on. And Tom and I had spoken with one of the community members at one point early in our tenure around doing a land dedication for Native Americans here in Nederland. And that's one of the things that bothers me a little bit about established in 1874 is just that it kind of indicates that nobody was here before then and on some level. And I don't know that I know we can't do justice to that part of our history per se, the fact that we are also immigrants here, all of us. And however, I still think that if anything can be done to speak to that deeper history that extends beyond 1874 in a tagline, I would love to see that done on some level, even if it's just a nod or a gesture or, so I don't know how to do that.
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that, talking about land dedications, like I've talked to Atashna about that a few times myself, but I really think that if we did anything like that, it would have to happen with the community that we're actually talking about, because those folks still exist.
Correct. And I'm not,
Right. And so that would require like a reaching out,
of course,
like maybe even like partnering with TRR, Towards Right Relationship.
Yep.
And like doing something that would be a serious, I think, long-term effort.
A bigger undertaking for sure. And I'm not suggesting that we try to do anything like that here. I'm just suggesting that perhaps our tagline could capture more than in terms of a moment in time, a deeper history, if you will, that can point to or speak to our mining roots, our the Ute trading post qualities, the animals and the moose, and the native biology that's here, the geology perhaps, geologic time perhaps. So I'm kind of not super fond of established in 1874 just for that reason, because I like the idea of nodding towards a deeper history, if you will.
Yeah, I think that the idea makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, like, because we're a municipal corporation and not actually the community. Like, that's not what this is, right? Like, we're making a logo for a municipal corporation. We're like never going to achieve the identity of the people who have lived and moved through this land for thousands of years, right? I'm not sure we can capture it. I'm not, maybe we can, maybe it's a lack of imagination on my part, but I'm also not sure that it's our place to capture it as a municipal corporation, right? Kind of feels like the bad guys trying to make themselves not bad. And I think we should be careful of that. Like, we don't want to like kind of co-opt a history that isn't Netherlands, because Netherlands is a town, municipal corporation established in 1874, right? Like, that's what it is. And I guess that's my, like, I'm wary of trying to conflate those things on a philosophical level. But I understand what you're talking about. But I feel like almost the people need to do that independent of the government.
And I think there are other ways that we can get to that. But
Anyway, that's my feedback on the tagline.
did you have you heard of anything that would be reminiscent of that?
No,
No, okay.
that's why it's totally new, out of left field idea. So, yeah,
I would expect nothing left.
I'm good.
I think Miranda's comment about, this is going to go on a parking citation or something is a good context for, the place where it needs to fit. Not the tagline, but.
Well, the joke at our in-person meeting was on a death certificate and it's got strange magic on it.
That's right.
I don't know. I think a lot of Ned folks would be really happy with that. But yeah, agreed.
Do you have what you need?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
And thank you, folks, for being here and showing up and giving your comment. It was really useful.
In person. Thank you. Yeah, and you folks online for being here as well.
And to the folks who wrote in on the subject, thank you as well.
Yes.
And thank you to Go for the ongoing efforts.
Thank you all, and we're gonna move away from thank yous and move into our next action item, which is the pump track ballot question. Yes, Jesse and Tom, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the lead on this.
I'm speechless. I'll let Jesse do it.
So, yeah, basically, I have proposed the pump track vis-a-vis ProSap, and I like the idea. I think it's a good proposal. I think there's a lot of community support, and there has also been a pretty vocal, outspoken effort to put it on the ballot and to allow the voters to have a say in the use of that land there at Chipeta Park. And so I would like to do that. I would like to give us an opportunity to hear from the public on that and in the form of the election on the ballot. So that's what the proposal is, and happy to answer any questions or
One last point that's important. This is the last night we can get it on the ballot.
correct. So, the public, they did put together a petition trying to get something like this on the ballot anyways. It was rejected on sort of administrative grounds, as I understand it. And, but I still feel that, and really it was kind of the handwritten note that was saying, let's put this on the ballot that kind of tipped me over the edge. At that point, I called Tom for the co-sponsor and just said, hey, let's just do this. I don't see any reason not to. And it's, I think it doesn't cost us anything extra to put it on the ballot. Maybe there was an hour of legal fees, of some support to drop the resolution. But I think it's a great opportunity for us to just flex our democracy, our opportunity to utilize some of our democratic process and vehicles for public input. And I think it's a good thing for us to do. So that's why it's before you. And I'd appreciate your support on it, but I invite any questions or discussion.
Hey, Jesse, this is Tanya. It tells us to the where in Japan it's going to be.
Well,
I feel like a lot of
yes,
people
that's,
think it's
Yep.
Here on the ballot as to like, it's not just, do you want a pump track on Chipeta? Do you want a pump track on Chipeta Park in this location? Of
I think that's a good point.
people don't want it, for instance, in the big field, but maybe are okay with it in the proposed
It
location.
says
So
that
I
in
think
the
it's
resolution
really,
already. It says between the basketball
Does it?
court and parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah, and that's important. And I would also like for the, well, you know, the details about the pump track are on Engage Nederland currently, and that is all spelled out there as well. So to the extent that we can refer people to that if they want to make a more informed vote, I think is beneficial on the ballot language. Also, I would like to replace bike pump track with asphalt pump track because it's user friendly to all wheels. It can be enjoyed by scooters and skateboards and wheelchairs and bicycles and yeah, Strider bikes.
And it's also a point of major contention.
The
Right.
asphalt is
Yeah.
also a point of
And
contention.
so if
yes.
someone is voting on this, they're going to be like, well, I'd be fine with a dirt one, but not an asphalt one.
Correct.
Then how are they going to vote? So I think it makes sense to put asphalt in there.
Correct. And then yeah, so that's how I'd like to amend slightly the ballot language.
I had a question about the ballot language as well.
Mhm.
And I guess it's for the attorney. Attorney just turned on video, so maybe he's got something to say.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest you could say just an asphalt pump track. I mean, a pump track does have a connotation. I mean, it does.
Yeah, undulates.
Regardless of what you're taking on there, it's a certain design. But I think if the makeup of the pump track, whether it's asphalt or gravel or whatever it's made out of, is a point of contention that needs clarification, you could say an asphalt pump track.
Yeah, and that is what we're proposing is an asphalt pump track and not a dirt pump track.
And so I guess my question is about the word shall. Like, oh, I guess it's just to permit it, not to build it.
Well, actually, and I got clarification from our attorneys on this. We don't actually have to do what the public says. This is really kind of a temperature check. It's a popularity vote, and we're not actually proposing any legislation. There's no ordinance being put forward here. It's really just to say, is this popular or not?
Okay.
So this has no teeth, really. You know, legally.
So it doesn't even bind us to permitting?
It doesn't bind us to anything.
Okay.
So
No,
it
it's
gives us
purely an
information.
advisory question.
It's an advisory.
Purely-
It's like as if the ProSab came with a recommendation to the BOT to appoint somebody, and we chose somebody else. It's
because I just feel like the word shall really suggests that there is a binding quality to this. And is there a way to
make that
to
clear?
rework that so that it doesn't have that connotation?
Yeah, I think I remember thinking this or saying this when we talked about this today, but yeah, it does seem like we should make clear that everything you just said. That
Yeah,
this is not a,
I agree.
This is not, we are not bound, but
Yeah.
we are really looking for a straw poll about,
I
however you want to word it.
I was thinking that the language would read, would you like to see
Right.
asphalt pump track in between the basketball court and the parking lot at Chipeta Park?
But the ballot language has to read a certain way, does it not? There's reasons that it's written this way, I would imagine. What are we missing? Because this is an advisory question. How do we convey that?
It's just an advisory question. It's just putting another term that's used is just putting a measure in front of the voters. It's as though it's like Trustee Sievers suggested. It's a temperature gauge. It's taking the pulse of the electorate on a certain issue. So you can word it however you want.
Great.
You know, you could say.
I was going to suggest, would you support the town?
Would you
permitting
support the
construction of a
I like that. I do too.
I
Yeah,
like,
so the question,
What about the
sorry, the question would read, you know, would you support the town, would you support the town permitting the construction of an asphalt pump track in Chipeta Park between the basketball court and parking lot?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
And just a quick, question of, if we're trying to, it's basically trying to gauge public support. And as some people have expressed, like, the asphalt is a contentious factor. So if we're trying to gauge support for a pump track, or are we trying to gauge support for an asphalt pump track? Are we going to get more people who will oppose this measure simply because of the asphalt? Then, where does that leave us?
Yeah,
is my point. Like,
we would get that, but I think that would be a more accurate
Gauge.
representation of what the town wants. And if the town came out in force and said, yeah, I would support that, then
Then we know.
then the
Then
people
we
who
know,
want to do the
yeah.
project have a mandate,
For sure.
right?
But if you have people who, you have no way to separate the people who don't want a pump track or don't want a pump track in that spot with the people who say, who don't want an asphalt pump track. And because we're combining three things, you're trying to say, do we want a pump track? Do we want a pump track in this spot? And do we want an asphalt pump track? And I've heard people voice opposition to all three of those things independently.
But just to be clear, that is
That's the
what is
proposal.
proposed
Right,
is
I'm just-
asphalt.
Yes, exactly.
So
I'm just
that's
saying,
that's
like,
what's on the books.
right. So if this results in a
A no.
no, where does that leave us with, okay, do we come back and say, oh, well, what about a dirt pump
Yeah.
track between the basketball court? Right.
Yeah, or what about at the high school? Or
Okay.
what
Yeah,
about
just
at
that-
the
that was-
rink?
That was my
Yeah.
question. It's like,
Yeah.
where does that leave us if we're very specific about it and it doesn't pass?
Yeah, because we've already gotten, halfway down the road of designing and coming up with blueprints and
yeah.
engineering for an asphalt pump track in that specific location.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to pull back on that,
Yeah.
we should do
I'm
that
not
sooner than later.
suggesting
Yeah.
that we do. I'm just, trying to get clear of like, what measure of support are we expecting to get and
Well, I'm
And then
expecting a
what-
slam dunk.
And then what next? And I would also just say, I mean, that ProSab has put in the effort and determined that this is the most viable
Yeah.
solution and the most viable way to do it.
Yeah.
It lends a lot of weight to being as specific as we can, and I think I support it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the worst thing to do is be wishy-washy on something like this and like ask a trick question, to be like, do you support, oh, well, we didn't say
Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
that, and then.
We don't want to mince
Yeah,
words.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because then you just end up with the same situation we're in now, where
Totally.
you can't really tell who supports what.
Right.
So I think the more specific we can be, I'd rather see it completely shut down or
Yeah.
or we do it, right?
Bolstered.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Trustee Corvalon
I-
has her hand up.
I
Oh,
think,
go ahead.
yeah, I think of the cost of it, there's so town can't, but we're gonna spend $250,000 on a pump track when the majority of this money is not gonna come from town. So
Correct.
is there gonna be any where the financing is gonna come for it? Because I think thinking it's coming out of our budget.
I guess I just think it's important to just super quick. If Keith, you could clarify the Fair Campaign and Practices Act and this, like, once it's on the ballot, is town allowed to advocate for it, educate on it, and all of those things?
No.
Well,
Keith, maybe your opinion is what we want to hear.
yeah, so you can't spend any public funds in campaigning for the measure. Now, that doesn't mean that you as an individual, right, can go out and express your support or opposition for the ballot measure. You just can't use, public monies to actively campaign. But you certainly don't, as a trustee, you don't give up your First Amendment right to speak on a ballot issue.
But I think it's
Right.
important to note that that's staff. Like, you cannot use staff time for this. And so, well, yes,
Certainly can't use staff time.
it's on our Gage Netterland. it's your responsibility as individuals, and ProSabs can't go out and do this as a collective whole. So I just want to make sure that's very clear, because it seems like there's a lot of education needed, but you're not going to use town staff or ProSab to do that.
Well, currently there's a whole section on Engage Nederland that is describing the pump track. And so many of the questions are answered there, that there's a lot of misinformation that's getting thrown around. If people would just read Engage Nederland thoroughly, it would cut a lot of that off at the pass. Could I, as a ProSab and a BOT member, update Engage Nederland?
Yes,
That's a
Jesse Saber.
Town resource, town paid for resource.
So if ProSab were to update their presentation in a ProSab meeting and flesh out the details of the pump track, could that then be updated on Engage Nederland?
I would assume as soon as the ballots go out, that's kind of the starting point of no more financial resources towards this.
You assume, but let's ask the
Yeah,
lawyer.
that's, I'm looking at Keith for that answer.
Let me give you, if you would give me just 2 minutes, I will get right back to you on that.
But I guess.
I want to try and find what the trigger is under the FCPA. So give me 1 minute.
You got it.
Yeah, that
So
would be-
in this ballot, the cost of it at no, are
It's
we going to mention
immaterial.
anything about that, or
The
just?
cost of it is unknown at this point. It could
Right,
be
so,
$20,000. It could be $500,000. It could
Right,
be.
but is the have town pay for it, or is the intention?
The intention is to get it built at the moment, and
Would it be good
if the town offers money, I'm not going to say no. I, as the champion of this project, will be fundraising.
I have a question. Would it be good to put in the ballot language, just specifying the fact that town won't be paying for this, like at least in whole, or no?
No.
Okay.
I don't think we need to speak to how this thing is going to get paid for at this point.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would, if you knew this already, right, which you don't, right? But if we knew this already, it would actually be helpful for those in favor of the pump track if we did specify, right?
Oh,
But-
that there's a grant that's
Yeah,
worth
exactly.
$250.
But that's
Yeah.
simply not the case. So
Right.
I think it would, yeah, we can't
It's
really put it in there
misleading.
because
Yeah.
it's misleading.
Yeah. So to answer the board's question, once the ballot title's fixed and let's just say for argument's sake that you adopt this resolution and refer it, you've set the ballot title, that triggers the FCPA. That does not preclude individual town board of trustees from speaking out on the ballot issue or the measure on your own personal time. Make that clear, and then using your own personal resources. And in that context, that's when you can, if there are questions about, well, how's it going to get paid for? Those are things that can come up during the debate. So I would probably recommend that you keep the ballot, the advisory question simple. That would be my recommendation. I think you can use the opportunity while you're campaigning or just speaking to a resident about it, not necessarily advocating one way or another for it. That's the opportunity to broach the topic of funding, or however the financial assistance is going to come in whatever form it may come. But I would again recommend keeping the ballot measure simple.
All right, and can I ask if the town is hosting information about this project on its website, is that okay? If it's neutral information.
I'd say whatever you have right now is fine. If it's unsolicited, if someone is coming and it's unsolicited questions or I guess comments that are posed to staff about the measure, that's fine. I think once it starts to look and feel like campaigning, that's a hard no. So I think it just kind of depends. It depends on the circumstances. But if you were already planning on updating your website with additional information because you got some additional, materials that would expound on the proposal or the design, and you were going to put it up anyway, I think that's probably okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I'd like to move, I would just want to say, I'd like us to wrap up clarifying questions or anything we want the public to hear and then move to public comment. I have one thing I want the public to hear, but
Say it.
which is that out of the blue, a few weeks ago when I was up, because I coached the middle school, the principal, Gavin Goodrich, has said, hey, why don't you build that pump track over here on the easternmost portion of the east field of the high school? Now that a lot of work needs to be done. Like we haven't sat down and had a real talk about what BVSD thinks, liability, money, etc. It's at the same time, it's another spot that was just offered. And, what is it a problem? Do we annex that? Because it's right next to our water site, if they say
Well-
annex it, I mean, I just want people to know options.
Of course, and I think
Yes.
all of our discussion, we all have our First Amendment rights to campaign for the pump track to be at Chipeta Park or elsewhere. And after we, as a board, decide that we do want to put it to the public, we're all free to go out and talk to our neighbors and say how we intend to vote on it and why, all the reasons why we think our neighbors should vote on it, however we think they should vote. So, and I think, Billy, that's a perfectly reasonable piece of information that I think is worth pursuing and also considering. And I still want there to be a pump track at Chipeta Park. And however, I think we should all just speak our minds and then cast our vote.
Cool.
And maybe it'll bring more people to vote for the other things on the ballot.
Right.
Actually, yeah. I see good reasons to put this on the ballot. Okay, we're going to open up the public comment first in the room. Do you have any public comments on the pump track question going on the ballot? If not, we'll go online.
Teresa Robertson.
Teresa, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi, thanks again. I live across from Chipeta Park. I'm at 140 East First Street. I love the idea of this going on the ballot. I do have some curiosity because if people, it sounds like it's basically you're getting a poll, which is great. You're getting the temperature. But if people vote that they don't want it, that doesn't hold the board. The board still can do whatever it wants, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that'll piss a lot of people off if people say they don't want it and the board votes for it. That's all I'm saying.
A lot of people are pissed already, so we're good.
It's true.
No, but I mean, then why do it? It's like, I think that's even worse if you're asking for someone's opinion and then they give it to you and, say it's very decisive.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I personally think if it can easily be put someplace else, that would be great. Cause there is that parking lot's going to get pretty congested, would be my only feedback. I think the location in the park is okay with me. But I think, I don't know if you guys have looked at that part, the parking part, or if you just think everyone's going to ride their bike there, because they probably won't. They're going to come with their bikes in their car and unload it. That was my only concern of what I was hearing about, that you're going to get people's opinion, but then might not necessarily take them to vote on. And Jesse, I wanted to thank you for bringing this forward to be a ballot issue. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I say.
Thanks, Teresa.
Comment to that?
Yep.
This is Tanya.
Yes.
Transportation plan's complete. We're gonna parking suggestions that they gave us a couple years ago. A lot of parking do parking along the street. Park, is it Lakeview?
Lakeview, yeah.
Lakeview.
Yeah. Plan that could add a lot of parking at the back of there. future possibility of more parking in that area. That's all I
Yeah,
want.
and we've also discussed redesigning that Chipeta parking lot to be more efficient, which
Yeah.
that needs to happen. So all those things are on the docket, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. I see Melody, your hand raised, and
Scott
Scott.
Papich was before Melanie.
Oh, Scott Papich, because he raised his hand first. Scott, go ahead.
Evening, guys. Thanks for hosting this. I agree. Jesse's got a good point that everybody does have a right to campaign for a pump track in whatever location is available. But I will have to say it's completely irresponsible to put it on a ballot and ask people if they would support a pump track in one location and not also articulate the other locations that are choices.
Thanks. I guess
That's
a question, unless I just had a question for what you just said, but go ahead if you want to finish your comment.
No, go ahead. What do you got, Billy?
Well, I mean, so if you were to write it, you would list the location choices. Is that what you're saying?
I would say if you're gonna put it on a ballot and ask people if they would support it, you have to also ask them which of these 2 or 3 places, really get their opinion. Don't just put them in a corner and ask them if they agree with you. Give them an opportunity to actually give their opinion so we can make a choice that's good for the community. So if there are 2 or 3 different places that are viable choices, make those known on the ballot. Give them a chance to voice a vote on that as well, and give them some sense for what it's going to cost, if it's going to cost the community or the taxpayers. And include in that, this is what it costs. It includes the plan, the build, the maintenance. So, we really, if you want to let people give their opinion, give them a little bit more clear picture than just, here's what I like. Do you like it too? That's just irresponsible. Thanks for hearing me.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott?
I think irresponsible is a pretty strong word. The reality is that we have to this is the last night to make a decision. It's a go, no go on putting this on the ballot, and we're doing it with the information that we have right now. Another point is that GDA put money into a plan that is at Chipeta Park, so that's real. Everything else is hypothetical at this point.
That's the thing. There are not really multiple options here. That's the issue. Right now there is a proposal. There was surveys done. There were options explored. They were not determined to be viable. This was determined to be the viable place for doing this. This is where the studies have gone into and the engineering has gone into, where the money has gone into. So I think this is where we should be asking the question and not on like hypothetical random ideas of places where pump track could potentially be that we're not even sure are viable solutions.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of discussion about other options and about the fact that the costs are unknown. And I think it's a tricky place to go to put that on a ballot as you're stating it.
Thank you. Melody?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm Melody Baumhover, Nederland resident. I am in support of putting this on the ballot. I think it's really great of ProSab to offer that to the community and say, hey, we want to make sure that we're doing what you guys want. I think it's what the people have asked for. And I'm also in full support of this particular pump track project.
Thanks, Melody. Any other folks online have a comment on the pump track question going on the ballot in April? Can you read that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You
Go
can hear
ahead.
me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Kathleen Shipite, Magnolia Star Route. I'm in support of this going on the ballot. I think lots of people want it on the ballot, and I want to thank Jesse Sievers for moving this forward, being the person that has been working on this. I do think that it should say asphalt I don't like the fact that there's no bite in this, because I believe that is kind of the point. But if you wanted to come back, if it was voted down, if you wanted to come back and say, do you want a dirt bike pump track, I guess. But I'm thinking everybody, the whole purpose was where we're at with ProSab is it's going to be asphalt. So I do want asphalt. I think that's a good idea to be in there. And I appreciate Billy mentioning yet another place that it could go. And I just, when it comes to public lands, I believe that the public should have a say in what's going on their public lands. And feng shui wise, I don't like the location at Chipeta because when you approach and park, that's going to be like blocking your view in a sense. That'll be the first thing you see. So aesthetic wise, on a personal level, I don't think it's the best spot. Though I know the point was to get rid of the dirt and the mud because the grass won't grow there. So I just think this should go to the ballot, and I appreciate you guys taking the time and adding this to the agenda. I think a number of other things should have been added for the April ballot because this board has been talking about other things in front of the voters for the last year, and for some reason, nothing was added to the ballot, which really is a bum out, I think. So, and I think it doesn't reflect what number of people on the board have been saying for the last year or 2 years. So, yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. What other comments do we have online? Folks have comments about the pump track question? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
So are we up for putting this on the ballot then? Tom and I are suggesting it, and
I am.
you are, Billy?
Yes.
And
Well, I would move to approve Resolution 2024-13, referring to the electors an advisory ballot question pertaining to the authority to use a part of Chipeta Park for a bike pump track and setting the title for the ballot question. The ballot question I would like to amend from what is presented in the packet. I would like the ballot question to read. Sorry.
Would you support?
Would you support the town permitting the construction of an asphalt pump track in Chipeta Park between the basketball court and parking lot?
I love it. Thank you. Second. Yeah.
It's like, well, that doesn't count for anything, Jesse.
It's like, we're setting it up for you. This is yours, man.
Any discussion? We have a motion in a second. Any discussion? Okay, Macy.
Thanks, Eric.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. With that, we go into public comment on non-agenda items. We had 3 emails that were that are included in the packet from Deb Deandra, Kathleen Chipai, and Mary Majero. So those, we appreciate your comments and the time you took to put the detail into those that you did. Any other public comments on non-agenda items from folks in the room? And if not, folks online? Oh, cool. Kathleen, is your hand still raised or was that from earlier? She may not have.
I didn't see your hand raised earlier, so I think this is new.
Okay, Kathleen, just go ahead and call in.
I can fill the space
Go for
while we wait for Kathleen with a public comment.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of respond to some of the comments on the pump track initiative, as well as Kathleen's comments on some of the other things that she was hoping to see on the ballot. And I guess I just want to commend the public, the voting citizens of Nederland, for putting together 2 petitions to compel us to put 2 initiatives on the ballot, even though they were rejected. I really commend the efforts to exercise democracy and to practice our democracy, and to take action. And that is, as I understand it, the reason those were rejected is because there's nothing, there's no ordinance or legislation pertaining to those particular topics that are current right now. It would be like blocking Ron Mitchell's proposal now, even though there is no proposal, or the annexation from Kayla Evans, even though there is no proposal. So I appreciate, and the same goes for the pump track. There's no design being put before the public, before the Board of Trustees currently for the pump track. So I feel like this is a concession in some ways to put something on the ballot, to allow the public to go ahead and voice their opinion in a formalized way. It doesn't cost us anything extra to add that additional question on the ballot. And I like the opportunity for us to just go through the motions of putting something on the ballot and giving the general public an opportunity to chime in. I also, it's something that I've wanted to do, is find ways to compel higher voter turnout. I think that voting is something that, our ancestors have fought wars and died for in this country. And it's something that we shouldn't take for granted, and we can't take it for granted. And, I want us all to exercise that right. Those all eligible voters to vote. And so if this is an issue, the pump track is an issue that gets voter turnout up, then I'm all for putting it on the ballot and just let people go in there and make their opinion on whether or not they want the pump track there in Chipeta Park or not. So I guess, I just wanted to reiterate that good job to the public for putting together those petitions, even though they were rejected. I'm glad that we could take action today as a board and support what they were asking for, in my opinion. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm
Kathleen,
on
are you
now.
good? Great. Okay, go ahead.
Kathleen Chipai. My other public comment addresses what's going to take place at 750 Fifth Street. And I will say the language on the senior housing petition is probably going to be protested, the fact that it was rejected as non-legislative. I am obviously, being out of town, not a proponent of these initiatives, nor did I write the language. I have tried to rework the language from what the people that wanted these petitions addressed on the ballot. I have tried to help them turn it into not being rejected. However, the town attorney doesn't seem to be explaining, nor Macy, what is non-legislative in the housing initiative, because it says the town shall write an ordinance. So that is legislative. So I have a feeling that the people who were interested in that petition are going to move forward legally to try to rectify this and still get signatures, get the formatting approved, and get signatures and have a special election. And I think it's important. Again, we're dealing with public lands, and in that particular place, there's been plans or promises made to people who bought houses. And this is a kind of last minute change. I want to point out that, like Eric said, and was quoted in my letter at the meeting it occurred, that the SRU, a day after the board talked about housing and getting housing together, a day later, that significant piece of property that's level, flat, and probably has water lines going to it already, is taken away from people. And I also dispute the fact that the Board of Trustees is not allowed to talk about what happens at 750. I understand you're not allowed to talk about the SRU, but the public and the Board of Trustees should not be silenced. They still have their freedom of speech to talk about housing at that address, because that's what they've been talking about since 2006 that I'm aware of, to be low-income affordable housing. This initiative was an attempt to get seniors some housing. So I dispute, what is occurring with that initiative. And I don't know if this attorney can, I missed the beginning of the meeting, so if this attorney can elaborate when there's an SRU going, that when people bring up the same properties to the Board of Trustees, I believe they should be able to speak back to it and address it. I don't, all of a sudden, because there's an SRU, everybody's silenced and no one's allowed to talk about affordable or low income or senior housing on public land. It's insane. It actually pisses me off. So I don't believe that, I believe it's being misinterpreted when people say you can't talk about that property. No, we can't talk about the teen center's proposal.
Kathleen, why
But you
don't
guys
I can ask the lawyer Keith to, and I can.
Well, I mean, there was a lot in there and a lot to unpack.
So the
but-
specific thing I'll say, Keith, the only thing I'll ask you to clarify is if there's an active SRU on a property, won't even get into details, and people bring up another idea for that property.
Well, there was another idea before that idea, see,
I
years.
would like to finish the clarification because Keith
Okay,
doesn't
thank you,
know.
Billy.
So there's an SRU on a piece of town property, or, about the town, a piece of property for a specific use. The question Kathleen, I think, is asking is, are the trustees who are, in a quasi judicial situation with that SRU, are they free to talk about that property in general or for other uses?
And okay, so I would urge the board not to talk about any pending or pending quasi judicial matter or any potential matter that could come before the board as a quasi judicial matter. Now, if we're again, if it's outside of that context, I think the board should be very careful about what it talks about, knowing that that same piece of property is the subject of a pending land use development application. I'm not sure who the applicant is, but it's quite possible that those comments, even though they're not necessarily directed at the merits of their application, could be construed, as prejudging or some kind of bias. So I'm not sure what the other town attorney, what precise legal advice the town attorney has given the board. So I want to be careful in what I say. However, just as a general proposition, once there's a piece of land and there's a pending land use application pertaining to that land, it's, as a general rule of thumb, a good idea to not talk about it.
Thanks.
Unless and until there's a public hearing, and that's when that's the opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks. Yeah, that is consistent with what, our legal counsel has been. And Kathleen, I know last week when you brought this up, I had to say, I can't talk about that property. And I think even if there was gray area, I would still not talk about that property right now.
I guess my response is, it doesn't seem fair that it's public land, that a private entity has applied for a use, when there was a use that, another use that's on the table for years, and that, you know, it was never opened up to the public. That land was never opened up to the public to bid on for private uses whatsoever. So that's what I find disturbing in this whole thing, because one private entity puts a proposal on the use of public land for turning it into a private use, essentially, because the public won't access it anymore. It's just stunning to me. It does not seem fair. It doesn't at all that that everyone has to be silenced because it's public land. If it was a piece of private property, I fully support what the attorneys are saying. But because this is public land, I don't agree, and I'm really sad to hear that we're not going to be able to say anything until you've already voted away whatever the, you know, private use of public land, and nobody else is allowed to talk about a different use for public land that was already on the table. So I don't think this was fairly done, and I didn't want to think that Deb DeAndro was right, that it seemed like a sneaky move to do the SRU. Before anybody had any say about any of it. We just got the housing needs study back. We just got the land cleared from toxins, and it was the holidays, and January 2nd, all of a sudden we're not allowed to talk about it anymore. So I don't think that's fair, and I want that on record.
It will be. Thanks, Kathleen.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Any other public comments on non-agenda items? Hearing none. Any other business?
I just wanted to respond quickly to what Jesse said, because I think it's really important. And I also want to just throw out there, like, if I make a decision that people don't like even if I was on the other side, like, I will be the first person to sign the petition to put it to a public vote, right? Like, that is what the process actually is. I think it's really nice that Jesse and the team behind the Pump Track project have gone out in front of it and put it on the ballot question, but it's not binding, right? I would prefer that we go through the process that's actually elucidated, right, in the law, which is we make a decision first, then it is petitioned, then it goes to the ballot, right? And then it is binding. And I think that's the way that we should be doing things. So I'll be the first person to sign your petition, right, to overturn a decision that I make, because I do believe in democratic process, but we do have to go by the process.
And I can quote you on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Miranda.
Yeah, so we've been working on broadband with Maverick, trying to kind of get all of everything set, and ran into a hiccup that Verizon and T-Mobile are claiming that they fully serve high-speed internet in the town of Nederland. And
Sweet.
that's
How do I say that?
That's not, we don't believe that to be accurate. And so we are asking the community and you as board members to send me an email about your specific experience related to high-speed internet. If you've tried to sign up with T-Mobile and Verizon, there's kind of a link to sign up. You can test your internet, and it likely is going to generate a, we don't serve you. We really need screenshots of that. We need your addresses. We need your comments, because we're filing for an appeal. Because what this will do is, while we can still extend fiber kind of through Nederland and grab some of the kind of unincorporated or unserved, it could impact our ability to do direct line connections into homes in Nederland. So this is really important, but kind of struggling to get the appeal without really hearing from residents. And again, your screenshots are helpful, but we're going to run screenshots for everyone we reach out to. So your narrative, your screenshot, but I need that tomorrow, because we have to file our appeal by Friday morning.
Okay, you got mine.
I have Tom.
And I'll snap.
Thank you. And community member, we did put it on Facebook, and I've gotten some great responses, basically being like, this is insane. And it is. And so I just need to hear more and more of that. And I do apologize for the tight turnaround. We just got the updated map, and the appeal period for CPF funds is Friday. So.
I get rejected by them every time I try.
Yeah. So we will take your
T-Mobile or Verizon?
letters. We will take everything you have. Just plead to your neighbors as much as we can, flood them with this is inaccurate. That's really what we want to do.
And just to clarify, so I go to the T-Mobile website and it's going to ask me for The
Your
link
address.
somewhere up
I'm really
there.
even an expert on this, but I believe somewhere it'll ask you to sign up for T-Mobile like wireless, and it'll ask you for your address, and then when you put it in, there's a high likelihood it's going to say we don't serve.
But it's not just cell service. You have to search for their internet.
Yeah,
Internet
it's
service.
T-Mobile and Verizon claiming that they provide internet
Yeah.
here, high-speed internet.
Some houses
which
can
takes
get it.
Nederland from being unserved, 428 homes that were previously unserved on our map,
Right.
turning into served homes because Verizon and T-Mobile are claiming they serve.
There are some houses in Netherlands that can get T-Mobile. I know that.
Yeah, we do.
Correct.
Yeah,
But
I
not enough to argue that the entire heart of Nederland now doesn't need high-speed fiber internet.
Right.
So
So
two questions. Which is the entity that's like filing this? Like,
So when we apply for capital project funds, the map we had showed Nederland as unserved. When BEAD came out with their funding application and their map, it took us from 428 homes underserved to 428 homes served. So it's this BEAD map that's now creating issues for us. So we're going to file with Colorado Broadband Office to say this BEAD map is inaccurate. You need to go back to your CPF map, and that's what we want the funding for, so we can do direct line service.
gotcha. And then
I'll
for,
just jump in. It's 10 p.m. So if you guys do want to continue, we'll have to extinct.
That's all I got. Sorry.
Let's wrap it up.
I move to adjourn.
They move.
Second?
Yes.
All right. Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
and Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 10 o'clock p.m.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Online and in the room.
It was nice meeting y'all.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate your
Thanks a lot, Keith.
expertise and
Yeah.
Appreciate your help on the pump track.
Yeah, no problem. At some point, I'm sure I'll see y'all in person. But y'all have a good night.